Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Jalen straight away against Ananobi. Drive, stops to the dotted line. There's that step back, so strong as he knocks it down.
And you could do all you want against this guy, but at some point, if you're a volume shooter and you shoot the way he does, he's going to knock down some shots.
Backs up but doesn't shoot. Across the way to Green. Takes a pass to Hardaway. He'll drive. Around Monk. Wrap around left corner. Kyrie. Rainbow! Oh, man, did he bring rain with that?
Here's the next pitch. And swinging is Ohapi. Lifts a high fly ball. This is carrying deep out into left center. It is out of here.
There goes Tinsley. McCormick hits it in the air to left and deep. It sends back Meadows. Still going back, looking up. See you later. Off the community leader signs. A 2-run home run for Chaz McCormick. And the Astros lead it 2-0.
The pitch. Hit to right and deep. Hey, get up. Get up. Get up. Here it's on. Joey Weaver just hit a 3-run shot out of here. And the crew has the lead.
0-2, swung on and into the air down the left field line toward the wall. She is gone. It's a 2-run home run for Jose Trevino. Ole, Jose. He, against the wind, he drilled one low down the line into the seats. And the Yankees now take a 4-1 lead.
Ravi to my left, popping his head here on a Thursday morning. It's Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. He's in-house because DB is out traveling with the youngin', going on some recruiting visits.
I know.
And we appreciate you stepping up to the plate once again. Normally it's me I'm out of the chair more times than not when you step in. Thank goodness for everybody's good friend from 2020 that kept me out for about 5 days.
You're a little late to that party.
Yeah, that was the second time I had it. That was the second time. And it's funny because after I had a few, why can't I think of the word right now? All I want to say are injections. After I had a few
vaccinations. There we go.
I couldn't even think of that word. After I had a few of those, it was after all three that I ended up getting it twice. So it's kind of weird.
That's
kind of
tough.
funky.
That's tough for you.
It was a tough blow, but I appreciated you when you sat down in the chair. And now here you are again. And I'm really excited to work with you today because we haven't had this ever
I would say
before.
This is our first time. We're on like a first date here.
Yeah, kind of nervous.
A little bit.
Yeah, butterflies are setting in.
Are we going Dutch on the check? Like,
who's paying? Are we 50-50? Like, is that the society that we want to live in? Or maybe I just like, oh, Robbie, you're the new guy, so I'll take it this time.
I would say it is your show, so maybe, I don't know.
But maybe I bully you into taking the check. Who knows? I'll tell you what, though. I don't know if I have a lot of money to pay for this check because so that McCormick highlight that we heard in the intro, and full disclosure, I had no clue what Shane was going to run there outside of him saying, hey, I got some NBA and MLB clips. So I went to the border yesterday. Masters, it starts today.
Sure, yeah.
We will talk a little bit about that, and that is that's why I'm wearing green.
Okay.
It's the most exciting. More times than not, I get lucky. Like, really, I woke up this morning, just put on what was on the top shelf.
Sure.
Drove here and go, oh, thank goodness I'm wearing green.
I got like an army green on.
Yeah, so
I'm going to count it. Yeah, I'm going to count it.
So I went to the border because that's what every good degenerate does here in Nebraska. You go to the border, and
it means something different here than it does other places.
Yes, it does. You don't get stopped by border patrol on your way back from Council.
Much more open border.
No. And I made some bets about the Masters. We talked to Matt Adams yesterday. He works with the Golf Channel, really close with members of the game and people there. We talked to John Rathouse, and that was Tuesday. Somebody that, and I'm going to read a text exchange that he sent me about my Cameron Young play eventually. So hold tight on that.
Okay.
But I placed a couple of MLB bets while I was over there.
Well, yeah, you got to.
Well, I found out I had a $50 free bet in my DK account.
Okay.
And so I'm like, let's see let's see how damaging I can make the sports book. So I like home run parlays. This is why DB calls me a degenerate.
Yeah.
I like home run parlays.
A little bit.
I like same game hit parlays. I like to spend $5 and make 90.
Yep, but most of the time you just lose the $5.
More times than not, I lose the $5.
That's how parlays work.
But when you place that $10 parlay, say on an NBA bet like I did a month ago, and hit for $400, that's a lot of $5 bets.
You feel really, really good. You're like, man, exactly. I'm bankrolled for a couple months now.
I'm good. So I was not missing Jordan Walker's first home run. So big Cardinal fan.
Okay, sure,
Wasn't going to miss his first home run.
Nailed it.
Plus 700. He was batting 7th or 8th in the lineup yesterday. I got lucky, man. I was making beef jerky, and I was making it from scratch in the air fryer. Using the dehydrate setting, which I just found out my air fryer had.
Yeah, most of them do.
Yeah, I was using the air fryer like it's supposed to be.
Yeah, like an air fryer.
And then I'm like, dehydrate. This is what I need.
Yeah.
And so I just set that up. Now, the beef jerky I made was more healthy. I only put black pepper on it just to try it.
Okay,
and
sure.
It's kind of bland.
Yeah.
But the other grouping that I'm making has been marinating for 24 hours now.
In what?
So I got Montreal steak marinade.
Okay.
And it was, I think it's a Charbroil brand.
Yeah.
It was already came in the pouch.
Yeah.
All it said was, hey, you need 2 pounds of meat. Just pour it in your bag with your meat. I'm like, great. I don't have to do anything.
Done and done.
So I did that. I poured a little bit of liquid smoke in, about a teaspoon of liquid smoke.
You gotta be careful with that because it's overpowering.
It is.
Yeah.
So that's why I only did a teaspoon.
Yeah.
And then I put my rib rub on it. Not mine. Famous Dave's rib rub.
Sure.
I don't make rib rubs. I wish I could. So that's been marinating. I'll make that today. Beside the point, I'm listening to the Cardinal game, and my buddy's there.
Okay.
And my stream is not as fast as obviously the live game.
Sure. Yeah.
So I get a FaceTime call, and I'm like, there's no way. Because I knew Jordan Walker was coming up,
yeah.
But he was still a batter away on my radio stream.
Oh, so that you were very far behind.
Yeah. So I was just using MLB radio on my phone.
Okay.
So I have like the $30 subscription. I can get any Cardinal game. So when I can't see the TV because it's in the other room, I just put that on when I'm in the kitchen doing things.
Also, quick side note here. Baseball, very soothing to listen to over like the radio.
Very soothing.
Like it's got a nice rhythm to it, especially if you've got a play-by-play guy that you like a lot. You just have like a very like steady,
and you hear the Nat audio of the ballpark.
Yeah.
It is.
I really kind
calming.
of enjoy listening to a baseball game.
Funny enough, I went to go get a massage in town, like a real massage, not a Robert Kraft massage. I went to the mall and got a massage. There's a pretty good place in there, and my fiance goes, Andrew, why are you bringing your AirPods in? I go, there's baseball on. So I was listening to baseball as I'm getting them. Even though, like, you don't
need like the cool Oasis music.
Yeah, it's like Tranquility playing on their stream.
You know what I would listen to if this existed? I'm sorry to sidetrack your story here.
No, don't.
If there was like a Sirius satellite station that just played like Vin Scully games, I don't care which ones.
That would be cool.
I don't care which ones. Just like random.
That's Jack Buck to me.
Yeah, so like just random Vin Scully games throughout the ages. I'm not a Dodgers fan. I don't care about the Dodgers
just an
at all.
iconic voice.
But he's so, and his rhythm is so good. I would listen to that to like fall asleep to. It would be incredible. Serious. Can someone get on this, please?
Yeah.
Just
maybe it's you.
Just buy the archive of
you
all
do everything. You're a part-time radio host. You have an actual day job.
I do. Well, most of the day. No, yeah, I would listen to that without a doubt. That would be incredible.
Yeah.
I'm a big Don Orsillo guy too.
Really?
Padres. So he used to be with the Red Sox. I'm a big Red Sox fan. And so like he's called a lot of like the iconic like 04, 07. I think he was still there in 13, but he was gone by 18. Those are the only important years. But they moved on and he went to San Diego. So I will find myself, I know he's TV, not radio, but I'll find myself like watching random San Diego games just because I like listening to him. Like he's got a really, for whatever reason, he's got like just a very comforting kind of style to me.
Yep. Brandon Gaudin's like that for
me. Yeah.
Matt Viscursion is that for me. And I wish he was still on Sunday Night Baseball. Like nothing against, is it Ravitch now? That's on,
yeah.
Is he Sunday night? Carl Ravitch?
I know Boog does some of the ESPN stuff. I think Ravitch is on Sundays.
regardless, I really miss Vescursion, and I think it was A-Rod and who was the softball player?
Oh, Jessica Mendoza.
Mendoza.
Yeah.
I really liked the game.
I kind of struggle with A-Rod a little bit just because honestly, he's probably pretty good at it. I just hate A-Rod so much.
Yeah. Well, there are players, though, that just because they were the best doesn't make them the best broadcaster.
Most of them are very bad.
Yeah.
You know, I think John Smoltz is really good.
He is really good. Kind of a meanie.
Oh, yeah. But I think he's like really good. Like he's very insightful.
I asked him a couple of times to come on when I worked in ESPN in St. Louis to come on the show because we had connections with him.
Yeah.
Always would leave me on red. Always. Kind of a meanie. That's the best way. It's the best way to
anyway, so you're making jerky.
Anyway, I'm making jerky.
You're making jerky.
Get a FaceTime call. Walker hits a home run.
Yeah.
So I only had it was a $50 free bet. Did I say that?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just put 2 players in the home run parlay.
Okay.
Because I'm like, when you put $50 down, that wins you about $1,500 if it hits. So Walker hits, and that was plus 700 odds. I paired it with Yordan Alvarez.
Okay.
So I love betting on the Astros when they're at home because they have the Crawford boxes.
Sure. Yeah, little cheapies all the time.
I'm all about the cheapie home runs, but I've been betting left-handed batters lately because what people don't realize at the same time is their lefties can just absolutely smack it to right field. And it's a short wall over there.
Yeah.
And not like Red Sox short, but it's a short wall. And it's only about 320 feet or something.
Yeah, if that, yeah.
So I bet on Yordan. And I was between him and Kyle Tucker.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm checking it. Yordan gets a single. Next time, Kyle Tucker at the dish, first pitch, whack.
Well, of course you did.
337. And I'm like, here we go.
I'll put my money on Omaha.
No, I didn't do it that day. But I did during basketball season, and they covered a lot. And then here comes McCormick. Whack. I wasn't going to bet on him, but I just saw another ball leave the yard, and I'm like,
yeah, it's going to be one of those days, huh? Yeah.
Then we get to the 8th inning.
Yeah.
I'm like, maybe I can get a 5th at bat out of Yordan. It was 9, 1, 2, 3 in the order coming into the 8th. Out. Bregman at the dish. 0 for 4 on the day. All I need you to do is reach. Oh, I'm sorry. It was not that. It was either 6, 7, 8 or 7, 8, 9 to open the inning. And then Pena hit a home run in the 8th inning. So we had 3 home runs, and Bregman comes up 2 outs, goes 0 for 5. Yordan doesn't get another plate appearance. And not to say that one plate appearance would have
very hurt right now.
No, probably not.
I won't be all right because if Yordan would have walked up to the plate,
well, you should on Tucker.
And it's funny because I also did a same game hit parlay in the Cardinal game against the Braves. And Matt Olson, my buddy goes, hey, who's hitting a home run? I'm like, Matt Olson. He went 0 for 5 yesterday. He's hitting a home run. Hits a double, whacks a double to open his first AB. Second AB, hits one 410.
Nice.
And so that hit. And I'm like, well, that was the hardest leg of that parlay. And then it was, we need 2 bases from Acuna and a hit from Albies. And then the Cardinals just didn't do jack squad.
Yeah.
I mean, they got swept.
You know, I'll be honest, I've never got into the baseball. So I used to bet baseball a lot, but just winners.
Mm-hmm.
And I used to be really good because I was locked in, right? Like baseball used to be my favorite sport to watch. Like I had like the MLB TV deal.
Yep. And then you had to deal with the blackouts.
Well, so I'm not a Royals fan really. So I was like, oh, whatever.
Well, you born and raised here, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So you had 7 blackouts though.
Yeah, but I'm a Red Sox fan.
So so you're good.
I don't really care. But so I'd be locked in. So I'd watch the Red Sox game, and then I would watch a bunch of West Coast games, right? Because they were always on late, and I was like in college or whatever. And so I was really locked in on the wins and losses, and me and my buddy had gotten really, really good at it. I've never gotten into the in-game props for Major League Baseball, and I do it a lot for basketball, and I'm pretty good at it for basketball.
NBA.
Yeah, NBA.
College is so hard.
Yes, especially the in-game stuff like that. It's such a crapshoot. But that's why I don't do baseball either, right? Because your best player in the world can go 0 for 5,
mm-hmm.
for like a week straight, and you're like, well, that doesn't make any sense. And then he goes on a heater and you miss it and whatever.
Yep.
Whereas in basketball, it's like, yeah, you can have guys that have bad games, but just the way the thing is structured, right?
You could have guys that have 3 points at half and then end with 30.
Well, not just that. Like, okay, so
last night.
you're going to have, especially in today's game, both teams are probably going to score 110 points, right? Minimum. If you're going to have some score 130, some are going to score like 98, but you're getting 100 points for the most part, right? Those 100 points have to come from somewhere.
And when you have 5 of the best players on the floor, it's not like, hey, one person is scoring 50.
Yes, right? And so, and you know how their teams are structured, right? So, okay, if you're betting Luka props, Luka's going to get to 25 every night just by existing, right? And so, to me, like NBA player props are so much easier because there's almost a certainty just by the structure of how the game is set up, right? Baseball is not that at all. Baseball, you can have the best pitcher in the world get shelled, throws a third of an inning, out, right? Best hitter in the world, 0 for 5, whatever. You don't see him again for a week. He goes on a home run drought for 3 weeks. I couldn't do it. I think the stress of it would make me hate baseball.
And it's supposed to be a relaxing sport.
And I'd be like, this is the dumbest thing in the world. It is
frustrating.
Yeah, I can't do it.
Last week, same situation. George Springer, one of the best hitters. Like, I'm not going to say the best hitter, but he's
really good.
There.
Really good player.
0 for 5.
Yep.
Only guy that missed in the hit parlay. 0 for 5. He's a leadoff hitter.
That's what I mean.
So I knew he was going to get a lot of APs.
Yeah, he's going to get his at-bats.
Yep.
No, that's exactly what I mean, though, is you'll have these guys. I mean, like Trout's a great example, right? Probably the best player in
my favorite player in baseball. So
second best player in the game after his teammate. But incredible. Is going to put up consistent numbers at, like, as long as he's healthy and playing. He's going to over the course of the year. So I would do like year-long player props for baseball
if you could.
Yeah, because the averages will come out, right? But from game to game, it's such a crapshoot.
It is. Yeah, because and a lot of times too, you run into a guy getting hit by a pitch or even a Goldschmidt stat line. Last night, I think he went 0 for 1. He had like 3 walks and a hit by pitch.
That's what I mean. Like, even if some guy's cooking, right? If somebody's playing great, it's like, we're just gonna throw to him today. And it's like, well, I lost my bet because they're chicken and didn't want to throw to him.
Sometimes too, I wonder if the learning curve in baseball also has something to do with the inconsistencies of what we're seeing out of players this year, because it was probably the worst year to implement a lot of these rules when you had the World Baseball Classic going on at the same time.
Yeah.
Because both rule sets were different.
Yeah.
In the WBC, you could do whatever you wanted.
Yes.
And then you didn't have guys that were essentially tricking their brain in spring training of, hey, I only have 6 seconds to really look at the pitcher. Or however long it is. I can't remember. Is the pitch clock 20 seconds, 15 seconds,
20, I think.
Is it 20?
I think it's 20.
Okay, so you get the pitch, they throw it back, clock starts, whatever. You got to make contact with the pitcher at 8. And there are so many players that I've been seeing that try to call time. Even yesterday, who was it that Tim Anderson tried to call time?
Sure,
and thought he did because he felt Logan Webb quick pitched him, and he got called for a strikeout, and he's halfway on the on deck circle, and he literally out of the box, and Blue rings him up. Gets mad about it, said he made contact with the pitcher. Well, Tim Anderson played in the World Baseball Classic.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it would have changed if you would have had spring training, but we saw Manny Machado get tossed for something similar with a pitch clock.
That's because Manny Machado's the worst.
Yeah. But he was just arguing a certain call. And again, a guy that played for the Dominican Republic. You're going to find that to be the case. I remember Goldschmidt saying during the WBC, like, it's going to be weird going back to Major League Baseball.
Well, you're just not getting the reps in, right?
And just trying to beat the learning curve.
Instead of giving your spring training reps in where you're working on the same rules or whatever, you're going to do this other thing, which is great. Like
in the World Baseball Classic, much more competitive than spring training.
Yeah.
I am not saying, hey, go do spring.
But just from the standpoint of learning the new rules and everything like that, it's probably wasn't super helpful. So it's 15 bases empty, 20 runner on.
Okay.
Seconds.
Yeah, so we were kind of close.
I mean, we're in the neighborhood.
We got the numbers right.
We did.
We just didn't get the actual rule right. I feel like that's a lot of what baseball.
I will say, listen, I think it feels
is.
like half the people playing don't quite know the rule yet either. So I don't think we're alone there. But I mean, I don't know. So you're a huge baseball guy still.
Huge baseball guy.
I like baseball. I'm not the way I was about it, right? I kind of like the changes.
So at first I hated them.
Yeah.
And the reason I hated them was because I played.
Yeah.
And I knew that this wasn't a sport that needed to be sped up. But when you're playing, it doesn't feel slow.
No, it doesn't. When you're watching,
it feels slow. And so I had to take my own personal feelings out of it.
Yeah.
And think what's better. And
consumer product. You have to think as a product.
So I looked at the stats after spring. Each game was down 20, 30 minutes. And I'm like, is 20, 30 minutes really everything when you're sitting? Say you were sitting down and watching a 2-hour, 40-minute game. If it was an extra 20 minutes, would you really care? Like, that's what I was thinking about because you're sitting there to be invested.
It's kind of the natural progression of the way things are going. Everything's so on demand right now. Everything's so at your fingertips. I mean, you have to speed it up just to stay with the progression of what's going on in real life. I mean, you have to.
Yep.
Well, that's why people like soccer. One of the reasons is because it's like, hey, I know in 2 hours I'm done.
Right, because there's no stoppage.
There's
beside the 7 or 8 minutes of stoppage time that comes.
You have the stoppage time, but for the most part, it's a 90-minute game.
And there's no commercials.
10, 15-minute halftime. Like, in 2 hours, we are done here. So you don't have to say, say you're talking to your wife or whoever. You're like, oh, I'm going to watch this game. She's like, okay, when do you think I'm going to be home? I don't know. It's a baseball game. Could be in 2 hours and 30 minutes. Could be 7 hours from now. I have no idea, right? And that's part of the charm of baseball a little bit. But I think on a regular basis, and honestly, I don't think it's so much about the games that go from 310 to 240, right? It's about the games that go from 3.5 hours to 245. It's like the average I get's only 20 or 30 minutes down, but some of these super long games have just become a lot more manageable. Right.
And I go one step further and say it's just to limit the guys that take way too long to pitch.
It's not about most people.
Pickoff after pickoff. And think, now this batter has been here for 10 minutes and we're still in the same AB.
So here's the thing that even more than the time, right? It's the perception of how the game moves for people when you're watching it, right? Do you care that much if it's 3 hours versus 2.5? Maybe not. But there's 3-hour movies that I've seen that I'm like, man, that feels like a 3-hour movie.
Right.
And I'm watching it and I'm checking my watch and I'm seeing how long I've got left and all these things, right? There's other 3-hour movies that I'm like, they start rolling credits and I was like, wait, are we done here? It's like, I would like
get a sequel.
I was like, can I have more? Right? Like, so there's a huge difference in how the 3 hours passes.
And I don't think there's a lot of people either that sit and watch the whole baseball game.
No,
whether
it's like on in the background and whatever. But it's like while you're watching, how is the game moving?
And that's why I had to take my personal feelings out of it.
Because if you're watching for a half hour, like you're real locked in for a half hour, and you see 2 batters, that's a tough hang.
But if you see 2 innings,
that's great.
Yeah,
right.
I'm with you there.
It's just a better product. It's a better TV product now. I don't know if the game's better, but it's better to watch.
We'll talk coaching style coming up. One piece of the press conference yesterday that I really took away from Coach Ed Foley. We're speaking with Steve Gardner, baseball writer, reporter, and senior fantasy editor for USA Today Sports. Brian Edwards later on at 8:45, and Michael Bruntz at 9. Still a lot to get to on the show. We'll reset it up, and we'll also give you the update regarding Mickey Joseph. All that and more. It's Coffee and Cream. Stick with us here on Hail Varsity Radio.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2
and I'd be like,
minutes.
this is the dumbest thing in the world.
It is frustrating.
And I'd be like, this is the dumbest thing in the world.
And it's supposed to be a relaxing sport.
And I'd be like, this is the dumbest thing in the world.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Hey, welcome back, 888-638-4876. If you'd like to get involved at any point, it's Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency. We are live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club, alongside my guy, Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers, Shane Schillerberg on the board. Shane, quick question, and I probably should have asked you this during the break. Do you still have some of the Ed Foley audio from yesterday handy? If not, it's cool.
I got some of it. I think Ravi has an excuse or a response to that. Of course, I've got it.
Okay.
I don't even remember what that's from.
Okay. I am not going to talk to Shane the rest of the day.
I'm glad I have my own. I'm glad I have my own drops now, though. That's fun.
Yeah, not too shabby, huh? Not too shabby. This is ridiculous. Yeah, I would put mine. I feel. How many drops do you have of me? Just one?
Yeah, just the one here.
Good. Good. I don't want you to have more. Yeah, the DB has a ton.
Well, yeah, because he's been collecting them for a decade.
He has been collecting those. Okay, let's see. I don't even want to try. That's Ed Foley. So Coach Foley was talking about Rule's coaching style and kind of his relationship with Coach Rule. Not Timmy Matt, but Timmy is a pro.
Allegedly. We don't know.
Tristan Alvano, he will be a pro.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Finding him, no doubt. So
I mean, not hard to find him. He was in your backyard.
Yeah. Well, it's pretty hard for Nebraska to start finding people in their backyard.
I think they found him. They were just like, we're just going to bury him a little bit more.
So what's the old adage? Culture eats strategy for breakfast. Right? You ever heard that?
Is that an adage?
I think so.
I'm unfamiliar.
Maybe it's an Andrew Rogers classic. Who knows?
Is it possible you made that up?
I think it is. Yeah, I just like looking up really advanced things and making people's minds go to work. So no matter how well designed your strategic plan is, it will fall flat unless your team shares the appropriate culture. I think that really encompasses this staff as a whole because, okay, for culture, right, getting 1% better every day. We've heard that more times than not now. We've heard, wearing team-issued clothing, which is could be looked at as unique. Accountability is a big thing and so forth as they start building their culture here. So people want to implement the plan, or I guess not just want to, who implement it matter. The people at the top matter who implement the plan. So this coaching staff I
would argue who implements the plan almost matters more than the plan itself. Because, and listen, I know, and I got a little triggered there when you're talking about culture because there's so many times that people preach about culture and it's just a word they use, right? And it's just we've got it. It's a feel-good word, and they know it's a word that they know it's important, but there's certain people that genuinely don't know, A, what it is, and B, how to build it, right? And I think we're coming off of a coach like that, right? Whatever his other flaws were, I think the inability to identify and create a culture was first and foremost among the list. And so what I like, though, is you started giving examples, because that's what Matt Rule does. That's where, when he talks about culture, I start to believe it, because he's not just like, oh, yeah, we're building the culture here. He tells us how we're building the culture. He tells us, not just, we're keeping people accountable. He tells us how they're keeping them accountable. He tells us, we're paying attention to detail. And then he tells us how we're paying attention to details, right? Without being asked, he volunteers that information because that's kind of part of who he is. And he wants to be like, hey, I know that these are buzzwords.
Great insight by you.
Buzzwords for a reason, though, right? Because they're important. The problem is more people know their buzzwords than people that actually know how to use those words or to create those words. And so you can make the argument that, like, yes, culture is more important than strategy. I think you can also make the argument that the guy building the culture is more important than what the actual culture is itself, right?
Yeah, culture eats strategy, but you have to be able to implement the culture.
And you have to be able to get people, like, you have to be real enough with what you're trying to build your culture. You have to embody your culture, right? Because you could have some guy up there and give him the notes, and if he doesn't live out that culture, if he doesn't embody that culture, if he doesn't look like that culture every day when he goes to practice or goes to a recruiting trip or whatever, right? Goes out on a press conference, goes on a media appearance. If he doesn't look like that culture every single time he's in public, then nobody cares. Nobody cares what he says after that, right? Because I'll be honest, I think that's part of the reason we didn't see a whole ton of Scott Frost just out and about, right? Because I don't think he was super comfortable with it, but B, then it would have been really easy to see he was not about some of the things he was trying to be about, right? And Matt Rule maybe this is a little thing. Maybe I'm drinking the Kool-Aid. Maybe I'm reading too much into this. But Matt Rule is out there seemingly every day. I see pictures of him on Twitter. It's like, oh, he went to this random Lincoln East thing. It's like, oh, he went to this restaurant. Oh, like I see pictures just randomly retweeted all across Twitter of Matt Rule everywhere. And it's like, that's a dude who is entirely comfortable that he is about what he says he's about.
Right.
And that's as important as what he says he's about.
And it's gotta trickle down the waterfall too.
Yeah.
The people below him can't just believe in the culture.
Mm-hmm.
They have to enact.
Yeah, it's the assistants, it's the support staff, it's everybody, right? Everybody has to be on the same page, which is why there's a difference between Matt Rule hiring a bunch of people that have worked with him before and that have connections with him and that he trusts versus Scott Frost bringing his entire staff over from UCF. It seemed okay at the time, right? Didn't have an issue with it at the time. Like, oh, look at that cohesiveness. They all know each other. That's great, whatever, right? Turns out maybe he just didn't have a great coaching network of people that he could tap into. We saw these aren't all people that were at Carolina. They were all over the place, right? And he goes and like, oh, picks that guy. And he goes, oh, I like that guy. And we worked together once. That was nice. And you're right, though. It can't just be Matt Rule. It's got to be Foley. It's got to be Satterfield. It's got to be the little child bride wide receivers
Garrett
coach.
McGuire.
Yes. I like to call him the child bride.
hey, don't diss on my guy now.
No, not hating. Not hating. It's just I see him and I was like, he looks younger than I get he's barely older than the players and youounger than some of them.
Also me.
Fair. But I'm like, that he looks.
And I shaved yesterday. I probably look 18.
He looks like he's on a recruiting trip. It's like, are you here for junior days, son?
hey, sorry, sir. The student section's over there.
Yeah. It's like, oh, your student ID doesn't get you back here. That's not
how this works.
He's gonna be the only guy who has to wear credentials on staff.
Yeah, they're gonna see him walking on the sidelines, and it's oh man, who's the coach's son down there?
I'll say, is it bring your kid to work day? Like, what's happening here?
No, you mentioned Ed Foley, and you talked about also plucking this staff away from different stops of Coach Rule, whether it was Baylor, Temple, Carolina, or somewhere completely different, like Coach Satterfield, for example, or Coach White, for example. Ed Foley, though, is the guy that has the longest history with Coach Rule. So that's why I really wanted to listen to him when he talked about relationship with Coach Rule, because there are some that, like, when your relationship's fresh with somebody, it's easy to be all sunshine, lollipops, and rainbows.
Yeah, because you haven't been through it.
But when you've had a guy that's been with you since like 2008,
you've gone through a couple like 1 or 2 win seasons.
You're talking about almost 2 decades now
of
time with this guy. And so I'm like, how is he really talking about his relationship? And now I'm paraphrasing here. And I'll say it. We'll go into the break. We'll talk about it a little bit more on the back end. But it's like working for somebody that loves football and is never afraid to voice his opinion. It's never challenging, just asking questions and saying what he sees. And he goes on to say that it's kind of like a winning formula. No one member of this staff is afraid to raise a concern at any point because there's trust built there.
Yes.
So when you have a relationship that's been built for about 15 years, one of two things can happen. Ego can get in the way, or trust kind of just rests on its own.
Yeah.
Right. And this staff has worked together, at least at some point in time since Nam, is what it feels like.
Yeah. I mean, basically.
You know what to expect out of each person, but you also know that if there's something Coach Rule sees on the field that he doesn't really like, he's not going to be afraid to say, Ravi, what'd you see there? And like, why did you go and do that?
Maybe even more importantly, the guys that have worked with him know the intention and how he says it.
And that's what it boils down to.
Because the
respect.
way you receive the criticism or the note is almost as important as the note itself.
Yeah. Respect you have for one another and understanding the role you play in this system is key.
It's a huge part of anything.
It's key.
Yeah.
When we come back, we'll continue these thoughts. We'll add one more nugget on Nebraska football. We'll reset up the show. Lots to do. Stick with us.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning. We'll be back in 3 minutes.
You know, I'm working. I'm much better than I was before I went to the NFL, because you get to spend a lot of time with the actual specialists. So in the past, you're coaching the tight end. You have if you got a big brother or a brother or a family member that's a real role model, not like this rah cheerleader stuff.
Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
You have if you got a big brother or a brother or a family member that's a real role model, not like this rah cheerleader stuff, like where, hey, you're doing a great job no matter whether you're doing a great job or not. You know, if you like, when I got little brothers, and I'd tell my little brothers, like, you're not acting the right way, or you're not, that's what it's like. So it's like working for somebody who loves football, who's very intense about the competitive spirit of football, and is not, it's his job in his mind, in our minds, and what we do and why we work well together is he'll say, hey, like we were talking today out there about the shield on the punt. He was like, what do you think about that? The shield looks really tight to me. So we had that conversation. We're going to go look at that on film. But he's not out there standing going to look at the shield and say something doesn't look right, and he's not going to say anything. Like I expect him, I want him to say something, and we have that relationship. But he's great like that with the coaches, and it's not like challenging. It's just, hey, this is what I'm seeing. Like and like a lot of people, like you're in that role with people in your family. Sometimes, do I say something? Like that's not the way it is on our staff. Our staff is like, that doesn't look right to me. I'm not coming after you. It doesn't look right to me. What do you think? And then we have a conversation about it. But for most of us, we're beyond the, what's your agenda or whatever, because we've all worked together, and, these guys we coached and we've been working with them now for years. There's a trust, and we're starting from a point where we're coming and coaching each other because we care about each other, not because we're trying to, there's no egos involved in that.
Sports are different than what he was kind of alluding to with that family drama, because when you're talking sports and you're critiquing maybe a play, it's easier to do that than it is to say something that maybe it's the elephant in the room or the drama that you're trying to address with family. Like, for example, Andrew, you never come home. Like Andrew, and this isn't drama. This is by no means. I'm just using this as like, hey, I just thought of this example.
Yeah.
I live away from my parents and my family.
Yeah.
Andrew, you never come home. You only come home on holidays, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Well, no one ever would say that because it's not an easy conversation to then have if it does spark from something deeper.
Sure.
But when you're talking about, hey, I feel like we could pinch more on the line to give more time for Brian to get his punt off or whatever it is that they're talking about. When you coach, you kind of coach together, right?
So I'm going to push back on that a little bit because I actually think, and so I coached small college basketball for 9 years, and there has to be, we talked about the trust before the break, right? There has to be a super high level of trust for people not to take, and I don't even want to use the word criticism because that's probably too strong of a word, but suggestions, notes, whatever you want to call them, tweaks to what they're trying to do really personally, especially in football when you have very assigned areas of this is what I do. Like, for instance, when I was coaching, I was in charge of evaluating pretty much all the high school like recruiting tape, right? So if there was a time when I was doing that if someone challenged me on what I was seeing, I would take that really personally because that was my job.
So how was the challenge though? Was it like,
well, so it'd be like, hey, I'd give an evaluation and everybody watched the tape, right? But I was kind of the usually the final.
Was it like, I don't see that? Or was it like, hey, did you also notice this?
Well, it's been both, right? So some people approach things in a really kind of diplomatic way, and some people that's just not really how they're wired. And that's part of where the trust comes in.
So it boils down to approach then.
I think it boils down to trust, right? Because if you trust the person giving you the information, the approach matters less, right? You don't have to be as tactful. You don't have to dance around a situation as much if you inherently trust the person giving you the feedback. So like if my head coach, who was a bit more abrasive is the wrong word, but you get what I'm trying to say. They're straightforward, blunt. He was a bit more blunt with his critiques or notes or whatever. But I played with him in college. I had been with him for a long time. If he gave me a note, I would basically take that as he's looking out for what's the best for all of us. We had a new guy come in at one point, didn't really know him as well, had only known him for about a couple months or whatever. If he gives a note, even in a better way, I don't trust it as much. I take it personally. Is he trying to have my job? Is he trying to do what I do now? He's the new guy on staff. Oh, does he want to be in charge of high school recruiting? So the dynamics there of the trust to me matter way more than the approach of the information you're giving.
And maybe it boils down to that, but I still think approach matters.
Oh, it does.
More than anything, because even if I was the new guy on the staff and you've been doing high school recruiting for 10 years, but the game evolves as it goes.
Sure.
So maybe, and it's always great to have different personalities. And it probably also helps, like, could you take information well, or do you not? Like, are you like, hey, this is me and it's only me?
Right.
You're probably not the right person for the staff then if you're like, hey, it's just me. We're not taking multiple perspectives. But if I were to approach and say, hey, something I noticed, and it's just a quick point, like I'm not saying anything that you said was wrong, but did you happen also to see, blah, blah, blah. You may say, no, I actually didn't see that. Good eye. Or you may say like, yeah, I saw that. I just don't think it's as important.
Sure.
More times than not, if you approach it with care, and because whether trust is there or not, you're going to respond, as you said, diplomatically. But
I might respond diplomatically, but how do I actually feel about that interaction?
And you know what? And
if the trust isn't there,
and that may be then something you talk about further down the road when it comes to the drama that can be caused and can be stirred up. Because if I constantly do that, now it's starting to become something different. I'm leaning to where your head's at now. Early on, approach matters, I think, entirely. End goal
is you build
no matter
trust.
How many times you approach it nicely, it's going to get annoying if there isn't trust built in.
Exactly. And I think that's where kind of Coach Foley was getting to with Coach Rule is they seem to have a level of trust in one another where, I mean, coaching is a deeply personal thing, especially when it's your area of expertise, right? So you have to have, in order to take coaching well from your other coaches, you have to have a level of humility that I do think Matt Rule exemplifies, at least from what I've seen, that, hey, I'm good at what I do. I'm not perfect. I'm good at what I do. There's still more I can learn. Like, I'm good at what I do, but there's room for improvement, right? And so that mindset is really, really important, because if you have that mindset and you have kind of the self-awareness and humility to take in new information without it being like there's a certain type of person. I was like this for a long time, is people, if you take a criticism on something you did, they take it as a criticism on who they are. And it's really hard for some people not to internalize that. But when you trust people, when you know they care about you, and when you know that they want what's best, not just for you, but for the organization as a whole, then you stop taking it as, oh, this person is criticizing who I am. They're just trying to help me do my job. Right. And that's a huge difference, right? And if you can build that, that's culture right there. You want to talk about culture?
Back to the initial point.
And that filters down to the players too, because a lot of players, especially guys that maybe they've been the best player they've ever been on the field with, right? Well, guess what? When you go play Ohio State, you're not going to be that guy. So there's a lot of times players are not used to taking really hard coaching or criticism or things like that. But when they can trust, the same way your assistant coaches and your other coaches can trust, hey, this is not about you as a person. We love you as a person. We think you're terrific. We want you to be part of this team. When you matter as a person first, and they know that, then they can take the coaching, right? Because they have the security of knowing, hey, I matter to Coach Rule and to Coach Foley and to Coach Satterfield, regardless of how this one play goes. If your value isn't play-to-play dependent, really easy to take coaching, right? Because you just want to get better. You just want to do the best you possibly can for all these other people you care about. And that goes to the coaching staff too. If you don't have that, then it's really easy to be like, oh, he really got on me today. He must hate me. I'm never going to play again. Am I going to have to transfer? Is he going to cut my scholarship? Is he going to recruit over me?
Yeah, the staff does a really good job of making you feel comfortable in the system.
Yes, and not just comfortable in the system, but comfortable as a person,
as a human being,
with who you are and where you stand with them as a relationship.
And they know that every personality is different and how to attack it. I guarantee there's a binder full of somebody's personality test.
Sure.
And like they're able to like look through
that. You've seen it, I'm sure. Some people you can yell at until you're blue in the face, and that's the best way for them to receive coaching. Right. There's some people you got to come. I was the arm around guy. Yeah. I was the good cop. Always. I was always the good cop, right? Pull this guy aside. I know coach was getting on you. Okay. We're okay here. Just do this, this, and this. And they would hear that more than the screaming, right? Everybody's different that way.
Before we take a break and talk Major League Baseball and completely change gears, I want to update those out there that may have missed
the Major League Baseball,
the story coming out yesterday with Mickey Joseph. And I'm just telling you what I know. I'm not going to assume details, just give you the facts we found out yesterday. According to 1011 Now, the domestic assault by strangulation charge against former interim head coach Mickey Joseph has been dismissed. During Joseph's preliminary hearing on Wednesday, Judge Lori Yardley dismissed the charge after the prosecutor said they received an email from the victim on February 17th stating that they would not testify. Court documents show an out-of-state subpoena was issued to contact the victim, but after multiple attempts, the victim couldn't be reached. It's believed she currently lives in Arizona. Joseph has been out on bond following his arrest on November 30th, 2022. This case was dismissed without prejudice, meaning that it could be refiled and looked at a later day. And also a point of note, legal separation was filed for December 12th. So this report may be hard to swallow for some. all I can say is I pray for healing for those involved.
Absolutely.
When we come back, we are talking MLB with Steve Gardner. That's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
The pitch. Hit to right and deep. Hey, get up! Get up! Here it's on. Joey Weaver just hit a 3-run shot out of here. And the crew has the lead.
Another 3-2. And Pena hits it well and hits it deep to left. Back is Meadows, and that ball is gone. 2-run home run for Jeremy Pena, his first of the year. And it is 8-2 Astros.
Welcome back, top of the hour here on Coffee and Cream in the Morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club, alongside Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers. We have the Sports Six-Pack coming up at the end of the show, presented by Zipline Brewing. We will get into some playoff scenario talk with the NBA.
Ooh. Can't wait.
Kind of like Robbie's baby.
Oh, that's my sweet spot.
I said Robbie. I connected Robbie and baby in the same one, which that kind of sounds weird if you just take that out of context. And then aside from that, we will talk Creighton's roster too, and maybe the future of that team and how they're being looked at as a consensus top 10 pick next year. So a lot still to touch on there, and there's some stuff in the transfer portal too. But before we do any of that, let's talk Major League Baseball with Steve Gardner. He's on with us now, baseball writer and reporter and senior fantasy editor for USA Today Sports at Steve A. Gardner on Twitter. Steve, good morning.
Good morning. How are you guys?
Good, man. Good. It's great to hear from you. Thanks for joining the show this morning. We were talking a little bit right off the top about the learning curve in baseball, just 6 games into the season, and how the new rule changes have affected the players and the fans, but more importantly, the players here. How much do you think this learning curve has to do with playing in the World Baseball Classic and not being able to get adjusted to the new rules, pitching, batting, in spring training?
Well, I mean, there are just a handful of guys who were in the World Baseball Classic when you look at the entire Major League population. And the other thing, too, is guys that have been in the minor leagues over the last few years and are coming up to the majors, they've had a lot of these rules or at least experienced some of them, if not all of them, during their minor league careers. So I think really just the veterans, the guys, as we've seen, Tim Anderson yesterday got ejected. Manny Machado got ejected after a couple of pitch clock violations were called on them. So really, it's the veterans that need to adjust themselves, and I think they will over the course of the next few weeks. But yeah, there's a bit of a learning curve as we're seeing.
Steve, I wanted to ask you about. I know we're 6 games in. Super long season, but have you seen anything yet of one of the teams that you expect to be good, whether it's the Padres off to kind of a slow start, a Seattle team a lot of people like kind of off to a slow start? Have you seen any red flags from some of the teams that maybe you liked going into the year that all of a sudden, even after just 6 games, you're like, maybe there's something there that I should be worried about?
Well, I think the Cardinals, might be one of those teams. I mean, we saw a little bit of a controversy between manager Ollie Marmol and Tyler O'Neill with whether he was hustling or not. I mean, those are some of the things that I would look for at the beginning of the season. Mm-hmm. Of course, you're going to have, pitchers not have good outings, not be sharp for one game, but attitude things, I don't know if it's going to fester, if maybe Marmol addresses it and it's gone, but it's dragged on for a couple of days. And that to me seems a little bit concerning now that the Cardinals, have just gotten swept in their last series and need to right the ship as they're sitting down at the bottom of the Central, and a team like Milwaukee, which looks really, really energized, and is on top of the league or on top of the division with a 5-1 mark.
Oh, Steve, that's my team. That's my team. Yep. The St. Louis Cardinals, they did not look good against the Braves, and you're absolutely right. It was kind of weird to see the back and forth between Ollie Marmol and Tyler O'Neill. Maybe take that one step further with as much as what do you think you chalk that up to? Is it a lack of communication? Is it a loss in the locker room? Is it what it's being called out to be, lack of effort? Or do you out of those 3, which would it be? And do you think this extends from something deeper?
I have to think that there's got to be some more backstory that we don't know about, just because it seems like a fairly simple thing. I mean, if somebody wasn't hustling, I look back to, other instances, say like with the Braves and Ronald Acuna Jr., when Brian Snitker benched him because he didn't run out a ball or something like that. I mean, you talk about hustling. Ronald Acuna Jr. in the series against the Cardinals. I mean, the beginning of the game yesterday, he beats out a routine ground ball to first base. And so I think that there's got to be something, especially if it's being dragged out for a day, 2 days. And Marmol didn't say, if O'Neill is going to be playing or starting on Friday when the Cardinals get back in action. So, yeah, to me, I mean, O'Neill has had some injury problems and he wants to stay healthy, but I mean, we're regular season now. You can kind of go at 90% effort and intensity in spring training, but as Marmol said, it's the regular season. Games count now. We need everything.
All right, Steve. Well, you indulged Andrew on his St. Louis question, so I'm going to have you indulge me on my Red Sox question here. Starting pitching hasn't looked awesome so far, despite a decent outing from Kluber yesterday. But how much of that to you? You mentioned maybe the starters aren't quite there yet. How much do you expect that to improve, or is this something I'm going to have to suffer through all year? I don't want to know.
Sorry to say.
I didn't like that question. I didn't like that. I heard the and I was out.
Yeah. I mean, you're relying on a couple of 34-year-old plus starters at the top of your rotation if you're the Red Sox, and Kluber and Chris Sale, both of whom have had serious injury issues the past few years. I mean, Tanner Houck has also been a little on and off.
Yeah.
And then the Red Sox, again, with James Paxton, when's Brian Bello going to be back? When's Garrett Whitlock going to be back? Hopefully soon. So, yeah, when you start the season with all of those types of injury questions, you can't really expect everything to go right. And so far, things have not particularly gone exceptionally well for the Red Sox, especially, they start 2-4 and haven't played outside of Fenway Park yet.
We're talking to Steve Gardner, baseball writer and reporter and senior fantasy editor for USA Today Sports, at Steve A. Gardner on Twitter. Steve, a legitimate concern with a team here locally that people really like, and that's the Royals having these storm chasers in town, the AAA affiliate. The lack of offense that we're seeing out of the Royals, coming into the season, I think most actually liked what they had on paper offensively. And the real wonder was supposed to be on the rubber. It's obviously early, and I don't want this to be like, oh, he's in panic mode. But as the game speeds up, the patience of fans dwindle away with it too. All that being said, this team feels good about how the bats have been swung early on. At least that's what they're saying. Are you okay with teams making statements like that? Like, well, we're hitting the ball hard. Or are you like, hey, you guys were actually shut out 3 of 6 games this season?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the sample size is small, and you could be, theoretically, you could be scalding the ball, and it just is finding its way into other, the defense's gloves, and you're not doing what on the scoreboard it looks like on the stat sheet and StatCast and exit velocities and all that sort of stuff. So that is possible. However, again, the Royals, I worry about the on-base percentage, getting people on base to be able to have, MJ Melendez and Salvador Perez and Vinny Pasquantino drive those guys in. Bobby Witt Jr. is an exciting young player, but there's a lot of swing and miss in his game. And if he's leading off, then, he's not necessarily walking a whole bunch, and that's what you need. You need on-base percentage at the top of the lineup. So that's one of the things I guess that the Royals need this season from the guys at the top. And if they're not getting it, then you're going to get some low-run games and maybe being shut out. The other thing, though, the one maybe a silver lining, the Blue Jays and the Twins have some pretty good pitching. So when you face those teams at the beginning of the year, maybe your results are a little bit skewed.
Steve, I know you do a lot of fantasy baseball stuff as well. Who are some young guys that you're looking at that have either gotten off to a hot start that people maybe should be paying more attention to, what either in fantasy or just regular fans that maybe don't realize some of the younger guys that have already started off hot so far this year?
Well, I really like back to the Cardinals again. I really like Jordan Walker.
Yeah, you
and
do.
I got a chance to see him in spring training in the game that he hit a couple of long home runs against the Washington Nationals, and he's just such an impressive young man. I think he's one of the guys that I'm really excited about watching this year in terms of your young players, some really good young players coming up through the ranks. I guess Anthony Volpe also getting a lot of attention in New York, playing shortstop there and starting as the Yankees starting shortstop. Another guy too, Miguel Vargas of the Dodgers has been really impressive with his ability to get on base. All these guys had success, at the upper levels of the minors, although I guess Walker skipped AAA, but have been really impressive in their minor league careers. And now that they're getting a chance to get into the majors and have these major roles with their teams and are succeeding so far, I think that's really exciting.
Steve, you talked skewed results when you mentioned the Royals. Tampa Bay is currently leading as baseball's only undefeated team. But when we talk skewed results, they've played the Nationals and they've played the Tigers to open the year. Should we be talking about Tampa as the only undefeated team this season left remaining after the first two series, or do they kind of just get, the fast pass up to this point?
Well, I'll tell you what, the Rays pitching is pretty darn good. I mean, watching Shane McClanahan come at you and throw 100 from the left side. The other guy, Jeffrey Springs had 6 no-hit innings. And yes, again, the quality of the opposition is not great so far for the Rays. But this is a team, that's perennially in the playoffs, in the playoff hunt. And, I think they're a very impressive team. And talk about young players, we haven't seen anywhere close to the best of Wander Franco. I think he's a potential batting champ in the American League. So this is a talented Rays team. And I think one of the things that I will be interested to see as we watch the Rays as the season progresses, they're very analytically oriented. So the change to not be able to shift as much may affect them more so than some of the other teams. So far, it's worked out as well as they could have imagined. And I think this is a very talented team. So 6-0 start. Yeah. The American League East is a difficult division for sure, but yeah, the Rays are definitely a playoff caliber team and one we should be watching all year.
Steve, I want to stay in the AL East for a second, and I promise I'm not going to ask another Red Sox question. But the Toronto Blue Jays, I feel like a team, and I know that they 92 wins last year, 91 I think the year before, but with all the talent and all the, I guess, hype around some of those players, it feels a little bit like they've been disappointing. Are you still kind of waiting for them to put it all together and break through in one of these seasons, or did we set the bar too high?
No, I think this is a very talented team. In fact, when we did our staff predictions at USA Today, I've got the Blue Jays winning the American League pennant and going to the World Series. I think they're that good. And when you add in the offseason guys in the outfield that can go get it, like Kevin Kiermaier and Dalton Varsho, and back of that pitching staff. And I think we're going to see one of the best, if not the best, offensive team in baseball this year because of what they've done at Rogers Center. And they've moved the fences in the power alleys, which is going to make this offense even more dangerous. So I love the squad. Vladimir Guerrero Jr., perennial MVP candidate. Bo Bichette could possibly be one as well. And then, Matt Chapman has had maybe one of the best seasons so far of anybody in Major League Baseball. So you add that to the pitching staff that they've got. Bullpen is very solid. This is a team that really doesn't have a whole lot of weaknesses. And, everything I was saying about the Rays being good, we know how good the Yankees are and how tough that AL East is. I think the Blue Jays may be the best of the bunch.
We have talked a lot about the Rangers, Steve, and how a lot of people like them. our current co-host that's out today on a recruiting trip, really likes them to make the wild card. That is the Rangers, right? And I want to ask you something about a current Ranger and a former Ranger. What do you think's more likely to happen? Jacob deGrom staying healthy all season, or Joey Gallo's strikeout total supersedes his batting average for the third straight season?
I'll tell you what, Joey Gallo's off to a very fine start. And I've always been a fan of his just because I like to see, those long home runs clear the fences. And he can hit them with the best of them. He just needs to make contact. So I will say this, Jacob deGrom is due to stay healthy. And when we see a full season of him, he can be a game changer. I think in terms of being likely that he will stay healthy all season, I would probably, I might say Gallo is more likely to accomplish what you were saying, but deGrom could be, a game changer. And if he does stay healthy, the Rangers are counting on him to stay healthy. They could be a factor for sure and be very dangerous if they do make the playoffs.
Steve, I'm going to stay in the AL West. I like staying in divisions apparently here. The Angels, two of the best players in the game, maybe the two best players in the game, had that great moment and kind of their great runs through the World Baseball Classic with Trout and Ohtani respectively. Actually off to a pretty solid start this year at 4-2. How sustainable do you think this is? Is there any chance that we actually get to see the Angels win some games with the two best players in the game?
I hope that happens. And I predicted the Angels to actually make the playoffs. So ahead of the Rangers. And I think I had the Rays out, which is not looking so smart at this point. But I do like the whole point of all of that is when you get Shohei Ohtani as one of the best hitters in the game and one of the best pitchers in the game, and the Angels in trying to, space out his starts and going to 6-man rotations, they're not going to do that this year. They're going to let him pitch every 5th day. And I think the more he pitches, the better their chances are, obviously, to win. So being able to have him take the ball every 5th day, to be in the lineup pretty much every day, and, team up with Mike Trout. Hopefully a healthy and not suspended Anthony Rendon in the lineup makes them a better team. And they went out and got a couple of guys in free agency this offseason with Hunter Renfroe and Brandon Drury, and also Tyler Anderson on the pitching staff. So they're making the effort there to get to the playoffs, to give Ohtani and Trout a chance to shine in the postseason. And, one of these days, they have to at least somewhat avoid that injury bug. I think this could be the year.
Steve, the two top players in batting average currently on the season are Matt Chapman and Brian Anderson. Again, we're talking about small sample sizes here, but if you had to choose, who do you think is more likely to keep up the pace between those two of having a good batting average? Because we're talking about career 250 hitters here, Matt Chapman or Brian Anderson.
Wow. I know Matt Chapman has a ton of swing and miss in his game. So, batting average from analyzing the fantasy numbers for as many years as I have, there's really not much of a chance he's going to finish above 240. So I think that's a bigger fluke. Brian Anderson has been closer to a 260 career hitter. And moving to Milwaukee this season, it's a better hitter's park. So I think Anderson would be.
Steve, I want to ask you about pitching because I like the pitching part of it a little bit, especially when it comes to fantasy. That's always my strategy. I don't know if that's a hot take or not. Who are a couple, I don't know if under the radar guys, but guys that maybe aren't popping to the front of most people's heads that you like, not just from a fantasy aspect, but you think could have either breakout years on the mound or contribute to a winning team in a way that maybe we aren't expecting?
Well, I got a couple of guys that I think are going to bounce back from poor seasons last year and be more of a factor this year than they were. One of them, we were just talking about the Brewers, Freddie Peralta, who had a great first start this season. He's got incredible stuff and has had injuries and battled injuries for most of his career. I think he's a guy that has huge upside. And Lucas Giolito with the White Sox, we've seen, be one of the best pitchers in the American League. And last year, just everything seemed to fall apart. And you look at the StatCast numbers, and he's essentially the same pitcher last year that he was the year before, but batting averages on balls in play, runners scoring that relievers allowed to score after he was out of the ball game. Some of those things just snowballed, I guess. And so he ended up a lot worse than he was. I think the talent is still there. So I'd watch for those two guys to kind of have a bounce back season. And another guy that I like that just made his major league debut, if you're looking for a guy that may be flying a little bit under the radar, Grayson Rodriguez in Baltimore. Pitched against DeGrom, left the game with the score tied, and I think he's going to be something special. He may not pitch a whole lot of innings this year because the Orioles will be a little bit careful with him, but he's going to be fun to watch.
Steve, we got about a minute here, and I'll ask this last question and then get you out of here. The Phillies, starting 1-5, would you call it a World Series hangover?
Yeah, I think that's the easy way to explain it away. But that's a tough division as well. And the other thing, they played their first 6 games on the road too, and things did not look great for them. But they're going to get the guys at the top of the order. Trey Turner, I think, is going to make a huge difference for them. And losing Reese Hoskins, that's a terrible blow. But they're going to get Bryce Harper back, maybe sooner than they
that's
thought.
what they're saying.
So, yeah, I think the Phillies don't need to panic just yet.
Steve, we appreciate your time this morning. Thanks so much for taking some time out of your day, and we'll talk again soon.
Sounds good, Andrew. Ravi, have a good day.
Hey, thanks, Steve. Steve Gardner, baseball writer, reporter, and senior fantasy editor for USA Today Sports. They were talking about Harper coming back in May now.
Really?
Yeah, that'd be
a huge boost.
Well, a huge fast forward from Tommy John surgery is what he had, right?
Yeah, so it's so much different with position players, though.
It is, but
it's still
remember how he got it. Right? Throwing the ball way too hard.
Yeah,
trying to do it as hard as he could from right field to home. And didn't he overthrow the catcher completely?
Yeah.
Man, JT, I'm sorry. But it'll be nice to have him back in the lineup, and I know a lot of Phillies fans are looking forward to that. When we come back, we'll change gears and talk basketball. NBA playoffs right around the corner.
Let's go.
Maybe some early playoff scenarios that we'll touch on, and then how about we get into who we think's going to come out of the East and who's coming out of the West?
Let's do it.
A way too early projection. We'll do all that next here on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Holiday the other way from Milwaukee. Slings it to the corner. Catch and shoot three. Bobby Portis cans another big one. Right in front of that Bucks bench. Another Michelob Ultra 3, and that was a big one. A soul sucker, if you will, from Bobby Portis.
5 on the shot clock. Quickly steps back now for 3. He's got another. Ooh. Emmanuel quickly has 7 3-pointers to go along with his 39 points.
Well, we had soul suckers in the intro.
Caught me off guard a little bit.
Ravi is sucking down some Diet Pepsi.
Always.
After the show, I'll be sucking down an Acres Ale. That authentic American beer brewed with Nebraska corn. Yes, it's 5 o'clock somewhere for somebody out there thinking like, wow, Andrew, this early in the morning?
Listen,
No,
your workday's over.
Yeah.
It's time to have a drink.
I started at 7 o'clock last night. This is real.
You're at the end of a 12
o'clock time.
Can we do the sports 6-pack right now so I can have some?
No, you have to wait your turn.
No.
I'm gonna make you suffer over there, Shane.
It's getting a little trigger happy over there, Shane.
He is. He's just like, man, I want to drink. Let me pop those tabs. No, but you can take a listen to what I'm about to tell you here, Shane, about Acres Ale. It's crisp, it's clean, it's light, it's refreshing. It's kind of everything that embodies the two people sitting at this table right now. Crisp, clean, light, and refreshing.
Wait, which one am I? Crisper, clean, or light and refreshing?
Light on the humor.
and I'd be like, this is the dumbest thing in the world.
Probably. It's locally brewed. It's the perfect beer. It's Acres Ale. As we quiet down the laughter here for a moment and talk.
Hopefully not for too long.
Talk NBA playoffs. And maybe the only team we should be laughing at is the Chicago Bulls as the 10, the playing game. That's my team,
Andrew,
Robbie.
why
I watched that
are you
last
doing
night.
That? Hold on, Andrew, why are you doing that?
Yeah, Joel, I don't know. But I shouldn't have asked him a Bulls question the other day. He's like, I'm not talking about it. But the NBA playoff scenarios look like this right now. At least as of last night, I don't know if things changed after the Lakers game, but 9 out of the 12 guaranteed playoff spots have been clinched. 5 teams have clinched home court advantage in the first round. And also a point of note, the top 3 teams in the draft lottery have been finalized. That's the Pistons, the Spurs, and the Rockets. They're each set to receive 14% chance at being awarded the number 1 pick. So you kind of know what you're getting out of the 1 seeds in the NBA. You know what you're getting out of the Nugs.
I think.
Really?
Well, so what does Jamal Murray look like, right? So he's been, coming off of the injury. He's been pretty solid this year, but can he take his, are we ever going to see bubble Jamal Murray again? Because there was a moment in the bubble where I was like, is he like the 3rd best player in the league? What's happening right now?
He can play when he wants to play.
And so it's like, okay, what version of Jamal Murray are we getting? What version
of Michael
Porter Jr. are you getting? Which is a constant question, right?
He could also be looked at as the best player sometimes, and then all of a sudden he's
talent, size, athleticism, right? If he puts everything together, he can dominate a game for stretches. But how often is he going to do that in the playoffs? Aaron Gordon, how good is he going to be in the playoffs for them? So that's because a lot of their guys don't have the experience in these situations. Like Jokic hasn't made a deep playoff run yet. That's the one blemish on his resume right now, right? So that's the part about the Nuggets that I'm not totally sure on.
I think you look at the rest of the West, though, and you think I'm more comfortable with the Nuggets based on how it looks right now.
You know who I think I'm the most comfortable with? I think it's the Suns. If KD's healthy.
Okay.
If KD is healthy, I am most comfortable with the Suns.
You know who I'm most comfortable with?
In the West?
You may laugh at me.
Okay.
By saying this, and maybe others out there too. I am still most comfortable with the Golden State Warriors.
No, I don't laugh at you, right? Because Wiggins is back.
Right. And hear me out. You get Wiggins back. Arguably the best 5 players in basketball when they're all 5 on the floor as a team.
Sure.
Right. And take away the away record. Take away the road record for a second.
It's hard to ignore, but
I know they have a record like the Pistons have on the road.
Horrifying.
I get it.
Horrifying.
But at some point, you have to reconcile the fact that they're still the Golden State Warriors. And when they get to the playoffs, what do the Golden State Warriors do in the playoffs?
Usually pretty well.
Usually well because they win games. And their guys step up in those moments. We mentioned off the top, I don't know how I feel about the Nuggets because no one have made a great playoff run and they're never really dangerous when they get there, even if they're a great team in the regular season. I would much rather have a guy feel good about a team.
You don't have any of those questions about the Warriors
that don't have a lot of question marks surrounding them outside of the fact that they can't play on the road. But again, so at some point they're going to have to beat that.
So their question, and maybe they won't. Maybe they won't beat that and they get balanced and it is what it is, right? But like if you're, because the 6th seed will end up playing the 3, right?
Right.
So are you scared of Sacramento if you're Golden State? No.
I'm not too scared of any team.
I like Sacramento, right? Like the beam. I think it's great.
I'd say Sacramento's more scared of seeing Golden State.
That's what I mean though, right? Like that's not an easy, hey, we finally made it back to the playoffs for the first time in 17 years. Yeah, let's go with the defending champs when they're finally healthy again. And Steph is having an all-time good Steph year, right? Like people haven't been paying that much attention because they've been hovering around 500 all year. But I don't think it's crazy because if you're talking about personnel only, they have as many answers as anybody, right? That's the key there. Now, you want to flip over. Now, the West is crazy because you still have, I mean, the gap between, and this is finally getting closed because the season's coming to an end, but as of like a week ago, the gap between the 4 seed and the 13 seed or the 12 seed was like 3 games.
Mm-hmm.
It's up to 5 now or
Right.
7 now as Utah's like, yeah, we'll just go ahead and fall back, and Portland kind of put it in the tank and whatever. But it's so jumbled in there. Like Golden State could still end up in the play-in game or in the play-in games, which is not ideal
And
for
it's kind of weird.
anyone, right? It does feel weird, but they're so jamly tight, like packed in there together. It kind of makes sense. Is there anybody you look at in the East and you're like, oh, I kind of like them?
The Celtics.
Yeah.
And so the reason I like the Celtics is kind of like what we just watched in college basketball with UConn. When you started the year with the Celtics, they were once the best team in the country, right? And then all of a sudden they fell off.
Yeah.
And they had that skid of like, man, what's going on? Like those first 2 months were awesome. Now for 3 weeks, you guys have just made your way back to the middle of the pack. That's kind of weird. But now they settled back in to being a top 5 offensive and defensive team. That's literally what we saw at UConn this year.
Yeah.
Once the number 1 team had a horrible stretch of 9 games when they got into conference play, and then going into the tournament, they looked good.
They figured it out, yeah.
I just don't think that there's another team in the East outside of the Bucks, of course, because I think they're just the best overall roster in the East that will compete with the Celtics.
So here's my issue with the Celtics. I agree with those things you said, right? Tatum and Brown are really difficult matchups for most teams to come up with. Brown can really lock down other people's wings in a way that most teams don't have a guy that you can throw Jaylen Brown you can throw him at Durant if you see him in the finals. You can throw him at Giannis if you see him in the Eastern on the Eastern
he's
side.
He's going to defend his butt off.
He's going to defend his butt off, and he's long enough, athletic enough to stay with basically anybody from like a 2 to a 4, right? And so, and then you can do some small ball lineups with them too. They've got a lot of lineup versatility. I have a couple. I don't know how much I trust Joe Mazzulla.
That's fair.
Because there's been times this year, and I don't expect everybody to know this because I watch more NBA basketball than I should, and teams that I don't necessarily care about. So, like, this is not like you don't watch as much. I shouldn't know this. This is stupid. But there's times this year where the Celtics rotations don't make any sense. Like, Derek White's been probably the 3rd best player on that team this year. He doesn't close the games half the time because they trust Marcus Smart or whatever. It's like, who I trust? The guy that's better than Marcus Smart. That's who I trust.
Right.
Like, I'd be I'm much cooler about that than we are. Oh, this guy won Defensive Player of the Year. Like, guess what? He's not that guy this year. Like, maybe shouldn't have been that guy last year. Like, he got kind of some momentum and whatever, and Embiid didn't play enough games to really get it. There's a couple things about the Celtics that I'm not sure. Whereas I look at the Bucks and I'm like,
and that's your team in the East?
I think so. I love that roster. I trust the fact that they've done it. They've been there. And at the end of the day, Giannis is the best player in the league. I mean, at the end of the day, right? Yeah. And that tends to matter most of the time. Like, whoever's got the best guy usually wins. That's Giannis.
Yeah, there's nobody that plays like him.
No, and there's nobody that can really throw anything at him, even if you've got Jaylen Brown.
Now, we finished talking NBA here, but how about we talk a little bit more? Because I guarantee Brian Edwards has some plays for us in the NBA slate. He's next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Now, Vegas insider, senior handicapper, and fan of the cold Budweiser bottles, Brian Edwards.
It's got to be touchdown, touchdown, touchdown.
Brian Edwards.
I don't really love it.
Brian Edwards.
Were they using the cream cheese to butter the bagel?
Brian Edwards.
I'm going with the cowgirl.
Here is Brian Edwards.
I always love this segment. I love Thursdays for this reason, because I get to talk to my guy, Brian Edwards, because he can either talk me off the ledge or he can make me feel a little bit better about myself whenever I tell him about my degenerate plays. He's Brian Edwards. He joins us via StreamYard right now if you're watching live on Twitter or live on YouTube. If not, you're in your car. You're on 590 ESPN Radio, and we appreciate having you here with us. Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Brian Edwards on the line here with Ravi and myself. B, good morning. Uh-oh.
Good morning. Good morning. Good morning.
Here it is. He's here. I was like, uh-oh. I think we have a same thing as last week, but we have B. How you doing, man? Good.
Doing good, man. Monday was one of the best nights of my gambling career.
Really? Tell us about it.
Well, I had UConn at 30-1 from like I want to say late January. But I also, because I had Miami at 50-1 going in, I added some more on my UConn future bet going into the Final Four, which was minus 115. And then I had team total over 32.5 in the first half, over 69.5 for the game for UConn, obviously. And then I had them -4 in the first half, and I had them -7 for the game. So it's been a good week.
A healthy week.
Yeah, it's been a healthy week.
Man. And okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So Andrew, Brian, let me ask you. So you mentioned you got UConn 30-1 in January, where they were not playing great basketball. How do you kind of look at that and say, hey, this is a team that I still think there's really good value in, even though they're not necessarily playing great ball right then? Because that was a stretch where they were basically playing 500 in conference, and you look at it and you say, oh, maybe this team isn't who we thought we were, but you went the other way. You said, hey, I can get this team that was number 2 in the country at great value.
Yeah, that's a great question. And the way I thought of it was, okay, I made the mistake of fading them against Alabama when they were out in Portland during the Thanksgiving holiday. And I got burned. They pounded Bama by 15, and I knew how good Bama was. And so the next day, I took UConn, I believe it was not Iowa. Iowa took the crush a couple days later. There's somebody else in between. But anyhow, then I started betting them every game. I got them at Florida. They pounded my Gators by 20 plus in Gainesville, packed crowd. Then they beat Oklahoma State. Oklahoma State at home. And I just felt like November, December, they were the best team in the country. They were covering every game. And by the way, they ended up winning every non-conference game by double digits this year, obviously, including all 6 tournament games. But at that point there in mid-December, they were down to like 11-1. Well, like y'all mentioned, they had that slump in January. They did not play good for about a 5-week stretch. They lost some tough road games like at Marquette, at Xavier, hard games. And I just thought, the schedule got tougher. And I just was like, all right. And I saw them play good one game. They kind of hit rock bottom at home against St. John's. I saw them play good one game. I was like, all right, maybe they're getting it back together. And I went and looked at the future odds. And there they were at 30-1 after they had been like 10 to 12-1, 3-4 weeks before. And I'm like, I'm going to grab them 30. I think they can regain this form. And I felt good about it ever since I made the bet.
Yeah, I'm sure you did. Once they started tournament play, you were like, yeah, this is fine with me. Hey, speaking of futures here, Brian, because you were looking ahead already to next year and the college basketball slate. UConn as the favorite, but they're also losing a pretty important piece on that roster. So it kind of is, an unsettling feeling in my stomach if I wanted to play UConn this early. I was just talking with Ravi, and he goes, he just looked it up and saw Creighton was at plus 2,500. You look at these futures already for college basketball, and you think what?
Well, I think it's dangerous because, we don't know. These kids jump in and out of the portal, all the time. And, I think Jordan Hawkins is definitely going pro. We'll probably find that out in the next 48 hours. He's going to be a lottery pick. But we don't know about, like, Sonogo or Jackson. Like, they're not going to be first-round picks. But they could still decide to declare or maybe just test the waters. And so I think it's hard because we just don't know what personnel we're going to have. I mean, it'll be a lot more clear here in 2 or 3 weeks, but we might not be able to get the number we can get now. So right now it's all a pass for me. If we got a second, I'll just throw out a couple of teams. So UConn is a 10 or 11-1 favorite at FanDuel. Next shortest odds, Duke 13-1, Kentucky 15-1. Don't get involved with Kentucky. Arizona 16-1, Marquette 16, Alabama and Purdue and Michigan State 16. And there's Creighton at 20-1. I mean, I think there's a good chance everybody comes back for Creighton, but I have seen Trey Alexander's got a late first round grade on one mock draft. And Kalkbrenner and Shireman, might could be second rounders. But if everybody comes back for Creighton, I think they got a great shot to get to the Final Four.
Yeah. So, Brian, let me ask you, you said right now this is kind of a stay away from you. Is there any set of circumstances where we are looking ahead this early where you would say, that actually kind of makes sense for me to make a play here with so many unknowns and so many variables out still?
Yeah. If Kalkbrenner and Alexander and Shireman would, announce they're coming back today and I could get Creighton at 20-1, I might think about it. Small change, real small play. But yeah, those are the kind of scenarios, you get an announcement. I mean, I'm going back a decade and a half, but all the Gator guys, after we won it all, they all did a little presser, and Noah and Brewer and Horford, we're all coming back. So if there was that kind of situation, go to the window.
Hey, Brian, let's change gears and talk a little UFC, because you specifically like Rosas in his fight. And, he's an interesting pick, 7-0, of course, undefeated, fights with a lot of confidence, but he is young, right?
Yeah.
He's a young fighter, riding a lot of momentum right now. Why are you leaning Rosas' way?
Well, he didn't show any young jitters in that octagon debut that was fantastic, getting that first round submission his last time out. And they had thrown him on, I believe he was in the pay-per-view opener, just like he is this time. And he's just a submission specialist. And I'm not talking about risking a lot, but for him to win by submission, that proposition bet is plus 170. He's 7-0 with 5 submissions. The other guy, Christian Rodriguez, he's only got 1 loss by decision. But this guy, Rosas, is a submission specialist, as I said. And so I'll take a shot plus 170.
Brian, a lot of fights on that card. UFC 287, Pereira Adesanya, the headliner there. Obviously, you got Jorge Masvidal fighting on that one Masvidal as well. Are there any other fights in that one that you're keeping an eye on, maybe waiting to see if some of the numbers move into a range that you like a little bit more?
Sure. Kevin Holland and Gilbert Burns, I think, are good. Are good in a parlay. Holland facing Ponzinibbio, Burns facing Masvidal. I didn't like Masvidal saying earlier this week that if he loses, he might retire. That sounds like he's got one foot out the door, and y'all know how he's sleeping in those silk sheets, and it gets harder to train.
Or Brian, it could mean that he's that confident in winning.
Oh, well, he'll definitely be coming out throwing haymakers. There's no doubt about that. He's going to come out swinging, but so is Gilbert. And I just think Gilbert's too good. I mean, I think Gilbert he's one of the best pound for pound out there right now. And his last performance against Chimaev was just astonishing and awesome. So I think Burns and Holland win, but I don't even know if that gets you even money in a parlay. The Pereira Adesanya is just a tough call. So tough. I don't know what to do on that one. I'm probably staying away.
You also like the Jazz +6 tonight. The Jazz, also a team that, you mentioned 1 foot out the door. That kind of feels like Utah right now. But covering the 6 against OKC, a good play?
Oh, just a super duper small play. But OKC is mired in an 0-8 against the spread slide. They've only won 2 of those games. One of those was a 1-point win over Detroit, which shouldn't even count. And although the Jazz are sitting out all their guys and tanking, they are 9-2 against the spread. Their last 11 as underdogs. And again, OKC 0-8 ATS slide. But it's shaky to bet NBA here these last couple of days. I was just throwing one play out there, and there you go. Jazz plus 6 or 6.5.
So Brian, that's what I was going to ask you is these last kind of few games, I know it's still pretty tight in the West. Does that help you, I guess, give a little more confidence in any of those in like a Nuggets Suns play or anything like that, where some of these West teams are still playing for some pretty serious seeding here?
Yeah, they are. And you gotta, and it's almost like you gotta wait till the last hour and a half to see who's playing pretty much this time of year. And so it just makes it very iffy. And I had some teams I was real monitored on their totals and stuff, and those kind of totals have kind of gone away. And I just, admittedly have been way more focused on college. So I just don't have much NBA right now. And I would just say to proceed with caution the rest of the regular season.
Hey, I know you're not a golf guy either, but who do you think's going to look better in green, the Masters champion or me right now?
Oh, you, of course.
Yeah, Brian Edwards. That's why I like you, my guy. That's why you're one of my favorite people on earth right there. He talks me up, especially when I'm feeling low about my sports bet losses.
That's because you're a degenerate on the baseball stuff, man.
Thanks so much, man. We appreciate it. We'll talk again next week.
All right, fellas, y'all have a great week and weekend.
Hey, MajorWager.com, BrianEdwardsSports.com. He's a senior handicapper at Vegas Insider. That was Brian Edwards at Vegas B. Edwards. Coming up, Michael Bruntz, senior writer for Husker 24/7. He's next here on Coffee and Cream.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream on Hail Varsity Radio with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning.
Welcome back, 9 o'clock hour here on Coffee and Cream in the morning on Hail Varsity Radio, powered by Currency, live from the H&H Chevrolet stage at Hail Varsity Club. Time flies when you're having fun, and we're having fun up here. It's Ravi Lulla, Andrew Rogers, and now we welcome in Michael Bruntz, senior writer for Husker 24/7 at Michael Bruntz on Twitter. It's Nebraska football, baseball, and recruiting time, and that's who we are talking about with our guy, Michael Bruntz. Michael, good morning.
How's it going?
Hey, it's great to hear your voice. It's going well.
Yours as well. I'm hoping, do you have any very early parlays for me, baseball parlays for me? I need some first inning action.
Bruntzy, man, Bruntzy. Let me tell you, yesterday I missed out on $1,500 because Jordan Alvarez didn't hit a home run.
No.
I know.
Dude, Bruntz, do we need to have an intervention for this guy?
And Bruntz, funny enough, you bring up first inning unders because that's one of my favorite bets.
Oh my God.
I did a 4-team parlay yesterday. All of the overs hit.
Wow.
Yeah.
You might not be good at this.
I don't think we need an intervention here. I think you found like the soft underbelly of gambling, which is like this first inning parlay. It's like I knew this guy that used to bet Ivy League football, which you can apparently get action on pretty easily, but only bet Ivy League football, and the guy just cleaned up. So if you can find your little niche, I think you're in a good spot there. No intervention needed.
So Bruntz, you're dead on there because when Creighton was in the Valley, and college basketball and college football are really good places to have an opportunity to get some good lines right. I don't understand people that bet the NFL because Vegas is getting those lines right. There's way too much action on them, right? But if you're betting I would do like mid-major college basketball, like just find a conference and become an expert in it. And you can clean up because those lines they're just guessing and they don't change them because nobody cares. There's like 14 bets on them across the country total. And you could actually make a really nice chunk of change if you know the conference better than Vegas does. And yeah, if it's the Ivy League football, you probably do.
Well, I mean, I don't think he was gambling on Ivy League football in Vegas.
Sure.
This was like 20 years ago. I mean, it was a little bit
more under the table,
up and up. Yeah, a little bit. But yeah, I totally agree. Like if you like just really knew like the Southland Conference, or you were just like a whack basketball, got like Big Sky, something like that, you could clean up, I think.
All right, I got you, Bruntzy. I'm ready.
Oh,
you ready for the first inning under parlay today? I got you.
Hit me.
We're going with my guy Ravi's favorite team, Boston and Detroit.
Oof.
Sale and Turnbull. Turnbull had a horrible first start, so that under's hitting for sure. Not very. I don't love the offenses there either. The White Sox hardly ever score in the first inning. Lance Lynn against Alex Wood, Giants under.
Okay.
Lock. Blake Snell, Spencer Strider later on tonight. Blake Snell, don't fail me. I'm really going out on a limb with you. I feel he's more limb worthy, like it's a low hanging limb, than Spencer Turnbull. And then Dustin May and Merrill Kelly. There's the 4. You're welcome.
Wow. There you go.
Money in the bank.
So what I got to dig into this further here. So what number are we talking about here for the over? It's like half a run?
So you bet first inning under. So no runs are scored in the first inning.
Oh my gosh, that sounds terrible.
Well, it sounds great because you know your fate by the end of the first.
Fair.
Now, DB always gives me trouble, though, because I start at the 1 o'clock and I end at the 9 o'clock game.
Yeah, so you don't know your fate for like 10 hours.
So he's like, well, but that's not what I mean by knowing the fate. Like when I'm watching the game, I'm like, all right, I don't have to watch anymore, especially teams that I don't love and care about. Let's get off this topic and like utilize Bruntz for why we have them. But
no, I'm learning here. I'm learning. So that's genius. You don't have to watch a whole 9 p.m. game. Sign me up for that.
I'll say Bruntz is just taking notes here. He's like
he's writing them down in his notes.
He's building a betting manifesto over there while we're talking.
He's writing a book and he's like, I was talking to this random guy that we called him Degenerate Andrew. And all right, Bruntzy, let's keep it with baseball here though. Because I think somebody that deserves some credit and a lot of attention right now is Will Walsh making the rotation on Sunday. I feel Coach Bolt finally came to his senses and said, I can't not give this man his moment and give him a try on Sunday. And we talk Sunday all the time with you about how important it is to find a way to win on Sunday. And the Huskers just haven't been able to do that this year. Knowing Walsh's story, though, how big of a moment is this for him? And maybe follow it up with how big of a moment it is for this team to potentially now have a solidified Sunday starter?
Yeah, it's I don't know that I would go solidified yet, but it's this seems like the best option that they've had. I mean, they've tried Michael Garza there, they've tried Caleb Clark there, that didn't work out. They'd flirted with kind of doing the Tampa Rays opener thing, I think, at times on Sunday, but I mean, Will Walsh has been. I mean, I can't recall a story like his in the, I've been covering Nebraska baseball off and on since like 2005. And like this kid just kind of coming out of nowhere. I mean, he, he's had Tommy John. He, badly injured his knee during a bullpen session. He had the hamate bone in his hand removed. There's one other pretty significant injury that I'm forgetting too, but, he had a labrum completely redone in his non-throwing arm. That was the other one. So he has not, never been healthy, but last summer he goes out and just absolutely dominates the Mink League as their player of the year as a pitcher and a hitter. And every time that he's gone to the mound in the last month, he's just looked sharp. I mean, he's just thrown strikes, hasn't walked guys. And there's really not a ton of mystery about what he's doing. I mean, he's throwing 87 to 89. He's mixing in a slider and a changeup, and he's just gotten outs. And, I think he's earned the right to start on Sunday and get that opportunity, and we'll see if he can kind of run with it. But, they're going to Michigan this weekend. And if you're kind of starting to look, taking dialing in on Nebraska's schedule and the really important series, it's the Michigan on the road this weekend. They've got Maryland on the road, and they've got Iowa on the road. Those are three huge series for Nebraska and starting to build up that RPI. They're sitting in the 90s right now. The Big Ten overall, a lot of teams kind of between like 40 and about 80 to 90. And, that's a tough place to be as a conference when you're trying to get at large bids. So Nebraska needs to take advantage of the opportunities when they have them, and this weekend's a big one.
Bruntz, wanted to ask you if my math is correct here. They are at the exact halfway point of their schedule so far. 26 games in, 16-9-1. You mentioned they're about to get into the meat of their conference schedule here. I guess what grade would you give the first half of the year for this team? I don't even know if I want to base it off expectations. Just from what you've seen, if you could give it a letter grade, what would that be?
I'd say probably a B right now. I mean, I think when you look at what you got to break it up offensively and on the mound. I mean, offensively, they're a top 15 offense in the country right now.
Right, sure.
They're really tough 1 through 9. I mean, this is the kind of lineup that if you got into a regional, you would not want to see Nebraska's lineup in a regional setting. I mean, it's that good. I mean, you got Max Anderson and Bryce Matthews hitting over 400 each. Matthews has been, just a revelation, this season at the top of the lineup. And, from that point of view, I mean, everybody was down on the offense last year, and rightfully so, but they have rebounded in a major way. On the mound, I think you feel okay about Olsen and Kamenska and what they give you on Friday and Saturday. It's that Sunday and midweek role that's really kind of bit them. And the reason that I would stop short of anything better than a B, they've lost some games where, you felt like they should probably be able to win. And a lot of it's just been not being able to get off to good starts early in games. The midweeks have been an issue. I think you're 3-3 in true midweeks this season. And they've dropped some Sunday games where, you felt like Nebraska was still in it and probably should have won. So, they're fielding the ball back to kind of where I think Will Bolt wants to be. So I think for the most part, they've been pretty good. It's just, little things here and there that are, when you kind of add them up at the end of the season can be the difference between, playing somewhere in June and, sitting at home or kind of, getting your stuff ready and going and playing summer ball earlier than you'd like. So I would probably go a B right now with the opportunity to kind of improve on that in the second half of the schedule here.
I think B is fair. I think that's a very fair
I think
grade
so.
for this team in the first half, too. Now, let's tie baseball into football here and maybe even go back to Will Walsh when I say this. But so Coach Rule is asking certain guys to try new spots on the field to better serve the athlete, better serve the team. Coach Bolt turning to a two-way player in Will Walsh and into really just now a pitcher. At least that's how they found to get the best use out of him. So I want to ask you this, Bruntz. How can Walsh be an example just to other players in general from an overcoming adversity stance, not just in baseball, but even what we're seeing in football?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, Will Walsh has always kind of been like, everybody's felt really bad for him because he's like, the one of the nicest guys on the team. He's been through the ringer, and I think whenever when you start talking about having bones taken out of your body, and you go through Tommy John, and you get your shoulder redone, and you have a bad knee injury, all those things, like, it really shifts your perspective, right? Like you've kind of been through the worst of it. And I think it really kind of, when you start having a little success, I mean, I think you handle it a little bit better. So I think there's some hard-earned perspective there for Will Walsh that, I don't know if that translates well to the football field. I mean, I think there's been some guys that have certainly, been through some things injury-wise in the past, or, haven't started for 4 years and all of a sudden kind of come on late in their careers. But, I just think it's a lesson in perseverance and also just maybe an appreciation for being able to just play. I mean, it's just kind of as simple as that, I think. And it's good to see somebody like that kind of crawl through it and come out the other end and having a little bit of success for the work they put in.
Was that a low key Andy Dufresne reference there, crawling through it and coming out?
It was. I think I've made a couple of those on the show. I don't know if it's something about the morning or the early game parlays, but it brings the Shawshank out in me.
Hey, that's okay.
Always a good time to make Shawshank references. So I wanted to ask you about, we were having a conversation earlier about some of the comments that Coach Foley made about the dynamics between the coaches on the coaching staff and being able to give each other notes and not in a challenging way. And I guess from your experience, I know you've been covering Nebraska, not just football, but all sports for a long time. Is that as unique and kind of novel of an atmosphere within a coaching staff as it sounds when he says it in your experience, or is this again just something where we're comparing the last staff and it seems to be like a dramatic difference?
I don't know. It's interesting when you kind of compare it with the last staff and even, going back to Mike Riley's staff. I mean, a lot of those guys, like on Riley's staff, had been together for a long time. Mm-hmm. They had some new guys that came in, but, the kind of the meat of the staff were, guys that had, heck, Danny Langsdorf, donated a kidney to Mike Kavanaugh's wife. Like that's, the kind of familiarity you have with some of those people. I think it kind of, the change though is, I think Matt Rule, makes kind of creates a family atmosphere that at the same time, he challenges his coaches in a way that I think kind of creates that air of, we're working together, that there's not ego in questions that are being asked or the way that guys are being confronted with things. I mean, I think he goes out of his way to create that. I think even from what we've been able to see in pre-practice stretching and things like that Matt Rule really challenges his assistant coaches to be on their spot, to know their things, and, to holds them accountable in the same way that they hold players accountable. It's kind of like the Michael Jordan, like, I never asked somebody to do something that I wouldn't do kind of thing. And I think it just kind of, everybody understands what they're supposed to do. Everybody understands what they're doing as a group, and it's kind of just the group ahead of the individual. It's pretty remarkable when you really break it down. how few guys there are on this staff. And I'm not talking about just the full-time assistants, but in the support staff and, the off the field people that aren't from that culture. So, that I think that's where it comes from. And I think it's important when times get tough, you're losing or something like that. Feelings don't get hurt and people aren't afraid to speak up. And I think that's important in kind of trying to build whatever they're trying to build here.
We're talking to Michael Bruntz, senior writer for Husker 24/7. Toss him a follow on Twitter at Michael Bruntz, Bruntz. Last one from me, Michael. Based on what you know from last year or what you've seen this spring, who would you say is Nebraska's biggest offensive weapon?
That's a good question. I would have to probably go with one of the running backs. I think that group with a better offensive line play can be much more effective than what they were last season. I don't know that there's somebody at the wide receiver spot right now that I would immediately point to and say, like, this is the alpha guy, the Trey Palmer, that's gonna, kind of make this thing click. I think Jeff Sims can be that kind of a weapon, just given his dual threat nature. But I think kind of as we sit right now, I think it's going to be somebody out of that running back group, whether it's Anthony Grant. I think they're going to use Ramir Johnson. That feels like an annual off-season conversation.
Right.
Like,
we're going to see Ramir this year.
Yeah. But I feel like there's an appreciation for what he can do, more so than maybe what there's been in the past. So I think that might lead him to be more of a factor offensively. And I think he can be that kind of, jack of all trades type athlete. I mean, think about the way that he was used in that game against Michigan a couple of years ago. I mean, that's the kind of things he can do. So I would point to running back. I think there's a lot of confidence in that coaching staff and what this running back room can be, as long as they get the offensive line picture right and can give them a little bit of room up front to move.
Bruntz, I know you got to bounce here, so we definitely appreciate your time, and I hope you hit on some of Andrew's wild
first inning under. I just showed Ravi. I found a T-shirt on Amazon that says "No runs first inning" on it. I'm gonna have to buy it.
I think I'm gonna make him a T-shirt that just says "Degenerate Parlays." That's all I'm gonna say.
And all my losses, all my betting tickets on there.
Bruntz, we appreciate you, man. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. Take care.
Hey, see you, Bruntz. Again, senior writer for Husker 24/7 at Michael Bruntz on Twitter. Always fun.
Oh, yeah, Bruntz. So I don't know if I've known Bruntz since I was like 14.
Really?
Yeah. So he was one of my brother's best friends in high school.
Oh, so similar in age.
So he's older than me. He's 3 years older than me. Yeah. He's my brother's age.
Okay.
So I was at his wedding as just like a guest. I think my brother was in it. He was at my brother's wedding. We were both groomsmen in my brother's wedding. Mm-hmm. So like Bruntz and I go way back. Yeah. Nice. Like I've known Bruntz since I was a much tougher hang than I am now. I was like nobody, like no 14-year-old. Like I'm self-aware now.
Well, especially you don't feel like you belong in a 17-year-old's class when you're 14.
Right.
But when you're 27 or when he's 27 and you're 24, you feel like you're on the same level.
Right. Yeah. It's much more. It's much more of like, hey, we're kind of peers here versus, oh, that's my older brother's best friend or whatever. And yeah, and his wife too. They all went to high school together. So I've known me and Bruntz to go way back.
So he was in the same class as your brother, same high school too?
Same high school, same class. Like, yeah, they were tight. They had their little crew.
And you always wanted to be one of them.
Well, right? I had
one of the kids on Stranger Things riding his bike, just trying to belong.
I had my own little group, but Bruntz was always cool. I always liked Bruntz. Yeah. So it's cool that I get to talk to him in these scenarios now.
Yeah, and the work that he does is
he's so good at what he does.
It's absolutely incredible.
I feel bad. I want the A's to be so good for him so badly. Like, I just want him to be good.
I remember talking to him last week about opening day, and He couldn't rally behind actually putting on, I think it was his like old jersey, like
Yeah.
his retro jersey.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
he just wore the T-shirt of all like the great players, and it was the cartoony look. It was incredible. I mean, that's a T-shirt that Shane, you would find at Goodwill.
I feel sorry for Bruntz.
Oh yeah,
having that be his team and that coming from a Raider fan who that team played in that stadium for the longest time, and everybody said it was just the dump of a stadium.
Oh, it's the worst. Yeah,
it's in a great part of town.
You know, I feel sorry for Bruntz.
No, I'm as part of it's because Bruntz roots for him. Part of it is I was a big
Moneyball fan.
I was a big Moneyball guy. I was a big Billy Bean guy, and I was
Same.
like, I really want Billy Bean to get one.
Especially because he stuck around when he didn't have to.
Yeah, he almost came to my Red Sox, and I was thrilled when that. Like, I remember that being the rumor, and I was like, "Yes, we freaking got Billy Bean." And then he's like, "Nope, I'm staying."
You know what's crazy too about that, and a good tie back into possibly Coach Rule here is Billy Bean stayed because family.
Yeah,
in Oakland.
Yeah,
he could have gone to the Red Sox and made a boatload of money.
Yep,
just kind of like Matt Rule. He could have sat on his couch.
I mean,
and
to
made
be fair, he's still making a boatload of money.
And he is making a ton of money. Yeah, no, don't get me wrong. But he could have just, didn't have to do a lot of work to make a lot of money.
Yeah, absolutely.
But also, over anything else, he worried about family wherever he moved. Like, his family had to be good with it. He had to benefit his family.
He talked about how his wife was like, "You need to be at Nebraska."
Right.
Like, I think that was a huge
family
factor
had to be bought in.
and going back to the table with Trev. Yeah.
And, Billy only really had his daughter to worry about at the time. But
I think he got remarried.
Yeah, and then he got remarried. Yeah, but in the moment,
right.
You're really worried about, I got to be close to my daughter.
Sure, yeah.
And well, if people don't know geography all too well,
Boston is very far from
I was going
Oakland.
to say they're on opposite ends of the country.
It's almost as far away as you can get.
Yeah, but
and still be in the U.S.
But that also, I think, separates and not people. Like, I don't really want to use that term. I don't want to use separates. I think that allows us to gravitate toward a person more whenever he prioritizes something that is also virtuous to us.
It's not even just virtuous, but it's something you can connect to, right? I don't know what it's like to be offered a job across the country for several $1 million a year in an incredibly high profile job. I don't know what that's like, right? I can't connect with that. What I can connect is this guy wanting to
latching on to the idea of, hey, I'm going to put my family first.
Either my family first or other things besides. It's not even necessarily just family, right? I appreciate, and listen, I like it when people work hard. Obviously, you want your football coaches to work hard. You want your GMs to work hard. But I also like it when I'm like, oh, these are people. They care about other things, right? Like, that's the thing that we always kind of got cut up on with Michael Jordan, right? Where you're like, does he care about anything else? And you finally start to see as he ages, right? They're like, oh, maybe he's actually a real person. And I like him more now. And I've always been a Jordan guy. But like, when you see that they're real people, it's way easier to connect to them.
Wait, Michael Jordan's a real person?
It depends on the day.
Did you watch The Last Dance?
Loved it. I love 3 Whiskey Jordan. He's my favorite MJ.
Such a good documentary. Oh, man. We'll keep it with basketball when we come back. Let's talk about the future with Creighton. We talked about their future betting line, but how about the lineup and what that's going to look like? We'll do that and the sports six-pack to follow next.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 5 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio.
Welcome back. We didn't get into much Masters talk, but if you missed anything about the Masters before you woke up this morning and thought, man, I'm going to just turn on the TV, watch some golf as I work from home, you can go back and listen to the podcast at Hail Varsity Radio, Spotify, Google, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. We had a great conversation with John Radhouse and Matt Adams over the past 2 days, and we did a draft of who we thought was going to win. So that was exciting. If you missed any of that, go back, listen to the podcast. Now, if you are attending the Masters, I'm jealous. I'm really jealous.
Do you enter the lottery? Do you do the thing?
Yeah. Just like I build 16 brackets for college basketball because I have the chance at winning whatever, $1 million. Make sure you don't park your car too close. But if you do, you have Dingman's back in Omaha that you can take your car to if it gets hit by a Jordan Spieth errant golf ball. Is he putting off the green and it's just flying like a driver? I don't know.
You never know.
I feel like I give Jordan Spieth a little too much grief. But, hey, he's lost me some money over the years. So I think it's warranted sometimes. Beside that, Bryson DeChambeau's there. He may just hit one.
I was saying he might just clear everything. Yeah,
and it'll go 600 yards, right?
And he still made his money. I mean, Jordan's made a lot of money over the last.
Oh, trust me, my digs at Jordan mean nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now, if you do have a problem with your car, take it to Dingman's Collision Center. 4 locations throughout the metro, along with the standalone mechanical shop, 120th and Maple. They're family-owned, family-run, and we love to support local on the show. Today is Holy Thursday. Ashley, my fiance, going through RCIA, so we are going to be probably living in our parish church over the next 3 days as she gets confirmed, which is pretty cool.
There you go.
But speaking of Catholicism, how about we move to the Catholic school in town and talk?
I was like, I don't know where you're going here.
And talk Creighton, because we know the future of Ashley. The future is, hey, she's getting confirmed. But we don't know the future of this roster because there are a lot of variables, right?
Yeah.
You assume Kaluma's not going to be there. Doesn't mean he won't.
Correct.
You assume Trey Alexander is good enough for the draft.
I think Trey's coming back.
It would make all the sense in the world to come back with the NIL structure and how much that could really benefit him. You assume Baylor Shireman's leaving.
I think Baylor's coming back.
Baylor could come back.
I think
he's
he's coming back.
Kalkbrenner is a question mark. I would hope that he comes back. I would assume also that he's coming back, but that doesn't mean that he won't go either. You add Isaac Trout, which is a great addition out of the portal, a local kid out of Grand Island coming back from Virginia. You have some other Omaha ties in the transfer portal.
You forgot one. You forgot one
that is currently there. Ryan Nemhard?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I just factored him in as coming back.
I think I told you the guys I think are coming back. I think there will be a surprise that I don't know who, I don't know what. I think there will be a surprise as far as someone that leaves that we aren't expecting.
And I feel like you just have to, plan for that.
You do.
Because you see this roster and everybody could come back.
Yeah.
But there is that one that you're just like, well, if 20% of your roster leaves out of 5, I'm not saying a big chunk, but if 20% leaves, you're okay with that.
It's almost, and I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's just a gut thing or whatever, but whenever we have these conversations, and it's not just you, I was doing this too. I think we all assume Nemhard's coming back, and maybe we're right in assuming, but when everybody's so sure about something in an atmosphere that's so volatile, and not saying Creighton, but the transfer portal in general, I almost just wonder, like, okay, he's a guy that had a really nice year that could be really nice in a lot of systems. Are we sure somebody isn't in his ear just being like, hey, here's a boatload of money?
And, I think that, but because of NIL, it always draws me back to college, because what is better for Ryan Nemhard?
No, I mean a college that's coming at him with a boatload of money.
Oh,
because
yes, okay, I'm with you.
Because there was these rumors last year, for example, about Arthur Kaluma, that there were teams coming at him, even though he wasn't in the transfer portal.
Right.
Oh, I'm sure no one was tampering, right? Whatever.
Well, nobody tampers.
Yeah, that's not a thing that we do. That anyone does, right? But there were these rumors out there that like Arthur Kaluma was going to get a huge bag from somebody, right? And they threw some school names out there, and it never ended up happening. Arthur Kaluma was back, and here we are, right? I just wonder if there's one of those out there, whether they commit to it or not, whether they stay or they don't. And Nemhard, in terms of production, maybe makes the most sense, because I think Kalkbrenner will have a shot to stick in the NBA. I think Kaluma will have a shot to stick in the NBA because he's got like a prototype wing body, right?
Has some things he needs to improve upon.
I think Shireman will make a killing in Europe. Maybe gets a chance in the NBA, maybe he doesn't, but will make, at the very least, a killing in Europe. I think Trey, we talked about with Brian Edwards. He says he's getting some late first-round grades. I think Trey, if he's a featured piece more next year, could maybe even improve his draft stock.
He could be mid-first round.
I think so. I like Trey's game so much.
It would benefit him so much to come back.
I think so, right? I think there's parts of his game, maybe show that he can run the point more. That would improve his stock a ton. Then I think about Ryan Nemhard. I don't really see him as an NBA guy because he's undersized, right? Not to say he's not super good, but just for an NBA point guard, he's undersized. So you look at him and you're like, man, maybe he hooks on in the NBA, but he's probably never getting that first round paycheck. Maybe he gets that first round paycheck from somebody else before he leaves college. That's the thing that comes about. Like he's the guy.
I discount that.
He's the guy I'm looking at this year as maybe the Arthur Kaluma last year, where I wouldn't be surprised if you start hearing some rumors of, there's some teams that want to throw a bag at Ryan Nemhard.
Yeah, and then it boils down to this. Do you want the money or do you want the success? Because if your team is shaped up to have the expectation, like Edwards said, B. Edwards goes, this could be a Final Four team if everybody comes back.
If everybody comes back and you're losing, let's say you lose one of either Baylor or Shireman. Let's say you lose one of those. Let's say you lose.
You mean?
Yeah. Sorry. Baylor, Shireman, or Arthur Kaluma. Let's say you lose both of them, but you replace one of them with Trout, right?
And I wouldn't be shocked if we see another local kid in the portal make their way here.
There's a couple local kids in the portal, and I don't think I'm talking about the one you're talking about. But there's, even if you take away Shireman, Kaluma, you replace one of them with Trout. Trout's arguably a better fit than Kaluma for what they're trying to do. And that's not a knock on Kaluma. That's just a skill set thing. And that's still a top 5-7 preseason team, even if you lose two of those guys, right? So if you're talking about winning and you're Ryan Nembhard and you know exactly what your role here is at Creighton, you're Trey Alexander, you know exactly what your role here is at Creighton. You're Ryan Kalkbrenner, you know exactly what your role here is at Creighton. Like, if that's what you're about trying to run this thing back, and you realize, man, we were within a whisker of playing a team we already beat this year for a national title. That's where Creighton was, right? They weren't just a point away from making a Final Four. They were a point away from having to play a 9 seed FAU, which good team, don't get me wrong, but stylistically great matchup for Creighton. And then playing a team they have already beat, a team that has only beat them once in their entire history in UConn for a national title. I get UConn's playing great right now, but if you're Creighton, that has to be in the back of your mind, right? When you're making these decisions, it has to be.
Yeah, because and here's what I think is the best case for Creighton too for the future is because of how far they've gone over the last 2 seasons, and they've improved where they've gone. Because of that, this team is going to start being built like one of the best teams in college basketball that we factor into the top 10 for years to come. If you continue to hold on to your core pieces and let them age out and replace the ones that do age out. So what I mean by that is if you have the guys that all come back and you add a Trout, you add maybe another portal addition here or there, you have some really good bench guys that didn't see the floor all too much.
Like Miller getting real minutes next year. I think Miller's going to be really good.
Miller's going to be very good. And I know that makes Kim happy out there.
I love his skill set. I love Mason Miller.
And you have the local kid from Millard North.
Jason Green. I think he's got a really interesting skill set.
He's got a good skill set too, but you're constantly going to be building like one of the great teams now. And I honestly believe Creighton fans out there are going to be excited with what they're going to see over the next 10, 15, 20 years with Creighton basketball.
Oh, I hope so.
Because it's just going to snowball like one of the Kentuckys of the world, like the UCLAs of the world, like Alabama was an unreal team this year, but they're not like a historic blue blood like Duke and UNC.
So here's the question. Here's the blueprint, right? It's Villanova. A lot of people say it's Gonzaga. Gonzaga gets one and dones and all these. I don't think Creighton's ever going to be that. Villanova gets guys that go play for 3 years, then go to the NBA. That's the plan you're trying to recreate.
Correct.
Now, the same thing with Villanova. Once Jay Wright left, once Coach McDermott leaves, whenever that is, can they replicate that with the next guy? That's the real question.
And that's the key. But until then, enjoy the moment.
Absolutely.
Because what is happening right now is going to be special with this Blue Jay basketball team and only good things to come. And you're going to hear a lot more good things out of the portal, too. I guarantee it as time goes on. When we come back, we've got the Sports Six Pack. Your questions, we'll answer them. That's how we wind down the show. It's Coffee and Cream here on Hail Varsity Radio.
Rogers and Benning will be back in 4 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 3 minutes. Rogers and Benning will be back in 2 minutes.
There's a couple schools I know that are coming after the 15.
I didn't know. Can you put your bias aside? So the Cup 1, yep, they are top 3 division. So the Cup 1, yep, they are top 3 division. I didn't know. Can you put your
Rogers and Benning will be back in 1 minute. Rogers and Benning will be back in 30 seconds. Coffee and Cream with Rogers and Benning on Hail Varsity Radio. Time now for the Sports Six-Pack on Coffee and Cream with Andrew Rogers and Damon Benning. Presented by Zipline Brewing Company, makers of Dear Old Nebraska Brew, the official beer of Nebraska alumni.
It's that time, Sports Six-Pack, and we appreciate our friends over at Zipline for being our big sponsor for this segment on the show. Let me tell you a few things about Zipline Brewing here. Their Dear Old Nebraska Brew beer is one of my favorites. It goes down so
it's
easy.
Terrific.
So easy. And you know what else Zipline has that we don't really talk about enough? They have taproom locations.
Mm-hmm.
They have one in Lincoln, or I shouldn't say one. They have some in Lincoln, and they have some in Omaha, right? How about the one in Omaha? Across the street from TD Ameritrade Park, a block from CHI Center, TD Ameritrade Park. We need to update this read.
Yeah. The check.
We're gonna change that. Across the street from Charles Schwab.
There we go.
A block from CHI Center. We actually did something at Zipline during the College World Series. And we probably will again this year. You find it next to Slowdown, Zipline's Omaha Tap Room, designed to quench your thirst for action, pouring fresh pints directly from their iconic shipping container. They promise to keep up with the fast pace of your busy lifestyle, too. If you're looking for a spot to get some of the action, maybe when I say action, I mean the whatever your favorite sporting event is on TV, but you also want to pair it with your favorite beer, go to Zipline.
There we go.
Sounds like you need to go tap that.
All right, Shane, go get some action somewhere else.
Question number 1.
I heard you guys ask this question to Michael Bruntz, but I want you guys to answer it too. It was about Nebraska's biggest offensive weapon.
Oh, so when I said based on last year or in what you've seen this spring, who do you think is Nebraska's biggest offensive weapon? I was kind of shocked that he went with the running backs. I feel like the safe answer, and it may not be the popular one, is Casey Thompson.
And that is the safe answer, right? I will say they seem to have given a lot of praise to the running back room. And I low-key wonder how much difference the philosophy changes on the offensive line will make a difference to the running back room specifically. Obviously, we haven't really seen Casey Thompson in the spring, right? So
but you base it off of last year.
Right. So if you're taking both of them together, the easy, safe answer is Casey Thompson.
And I probably would rest with that because I don't feel overly confident with anybody else. I know Coach Rule talks about how he likes Gabe Ervin Jr. a lot.
Too many question marks, right?
And I like how Satterfield talks about how big his tight ends are and how he can use them. The wide receiving room, Garrett McGuire talks about, Billy Kemp and his leadership. And we hear Xavier Bett's name popping up a lot more.
Which he's got the upside to be, right? He's got the abilities to be. So do a lot of guys in the running back room. Fedoni has that ability, right?
But we're just talking about what we think they can be.
Yes.
What we hope
this
they
is
can
all
be.
guess that we're guessing, right?
And if I'm thinking today, if I had to make a claim for the best offensive weapon, it's Casey Thompson.
I agree. And we could certainly be proven wrong.
And I hope I am.
I do too. If Casey Thompson's their best offensive weapon, I don't necessarily know how good the offense is. If you've got some of these other guys starting to fulfill their potential, then they're in business.
Question number 2.
All right, Masters betting question.
Let's go.
Okay.
Put on the jacket.
All right.
Man, you bet on everything, don't you?
What?
You bet on everything.
I told him
us degenerates can't hear you.
Don't let me in there with you. I'm not taking first inning unders.
No. I'm not saying you're a degenerate. I mean, like my people.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. End of round leader today will be who?
Ooh, I like this one. End of round leader.
Ooh, good question.
So you're gonna love this. I am such a fan of Hideki Matsuyama, and I've been talking about him forever because this is what you're going to get out of him. You're either going to see a guy that shoots 9 under on the day or +6. There's no in between. So I'm leaning toward the 9 under. His odds are fantastic too. Yesterday I checked with DB and it was 4,000, 40 to 1.
Ooh,
so I'll take Hideki Matsuyama. I know that if I want one of my leaders, like one of my favorites when we did that draft, Shaner, if I want one of them to win, I hope that they are leading toward the top. So that's your Schefflers of the world.
Yeah.
And BB's Rory, your Rom, Shane. I think Cameron Young can be dangerous too, and I'll tell you why in a moment, but who do you like?
I'm going to go not as much of a deep cut as your Matsuyama, but I'm not going leader of the pack here either. I'm going to go a little Justin Thomas spot.
Ooh.
Maybe starts off hot, and I don't think he's going to win necessarily, but starts off hot, fades a little bit. He's plus 2,000 right now to win, but I could see him putting together a nice round today.
So I was going back and forth with a friend of the show yesterday, and his buddy is former caddy. And he was telling me a little bit about Cam Young because he had overheard what we were talking about.
Yeah.
And Cam Young has a new caddy. And I believe it's Webb Simpson's former caddy.
Okay.
Regardless, this is what he said. He said Cam will stay patient, and based on talking to the caddy, they feel like they're in a good spot.
Okay.
Followed him on a few holes, looks good. Said Paul is exactly what he needed. The new caddy is exactly what Cam needed.
Okay.
Has a lot of shots around the green.
All right.
He just hopes that he won't be on the wrong side of a draw. Cam Young, that was my pick to win.
Okay. Going a little.
My long shot pick to win. Not really a long shot. He was 3,500.
Yeah, he's down to 28 at the one I'm looking at.
Yeah,
so,
baby.
Here we go.
We're bought in.
We got some Cam Young. Maybe you moved the line.
Yeah.
Are you a line mover?
I am. Watch out for those first inning unders. They're going to go up now.
Question number 3.
If you could throw out the first pitch to any MLB player, retired or active, alive today, who would it be?
Oh, alive today.
Alive today.
That's a key point to this.
Ooh, that's a good one.
My ideal would be Stan Musial.
All right.
That would be my ideal. But alive today.
You know, there's three names that come to mind for me immediately.
Okay. Are they all Red Sox?
No, one of them is not.
Okay.
But I bet you can guess one of them. The one that's not, based on the hat I'm wearing today. David Ortiz, Pedro Martinez, Ken Griffey Jr.
Ken Griffey Jr. would be amazing.
One of those,
he owned the Cardinals.
One of those three is for sure. If I have to pick one, Pedro's my all-time favorite. I'm going Pedro.
And you're going prime, right? Like in their prime?
No, just
well, I mean, if
today?
we're throwing them,
you're throwing
an
the
opening
first
pitch.
pitch.
I
Like
assume we're doing it today.
Yeah, you're doing it today. So
it's like old Pedro now.
But the good news is you're getting an autograph.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's really what you're taking home.
And it's not even the it's like the picture.
Yeah,
like the arm around him with the absolutely.
So
plus, if I do Pedro, I get to throw it out at Fenway, which I care about more. So
that's a good point.
Yeah,
Pujols would be up there on my
sure.
list.
Yeah.
Yachty would be up there on my list.
Legend, yeah.
Mike Trout's my current favorite player.
Fair, yeah.
And then if I had to choose one, I'd probably choose Mike Trout. Ooh, but Shohei Ohtani could be cool too.
Ooh, okay. Sure, you're going recency bias on me.
I'd go Mike Trout. I have Mike Trout socks, so I might as well pair it with an autographed baseball.
Are you serious?
Fair enough.
I am serious.
Question number 4.
And don't call me Shirley.
I'll look at this question from the other side previously to what was answered Tuesday. Is the transfer portal hurting college sports teams from a smaller school perspective?
You know, I did talk to a coach recently, and he told me that it sucks. Like it sucks for them because they develop the guys that get overlooked, and then all of a sudden they feel like they get poached. So
Sure.
I do understand the feeling there from the perspective of that smaller school.
But this is a two-way street, right? Because the 5-star guys that don't make it work out in their first place go a level down and end up at mid-majors and places like that never would have had a shot at them in the first place. So, yes, it's a different dynamic, and it can be really frustrating.
And I think it's more because they put in the work.
Sure.
Right? So they put in the work on a player, so they do a lot. But meanwhile, you get a 5-star that comes to you. It's like, you get somebody sloppy seconds.
Listen, if you're a coach, you should be rooting for that guy to succeed.
And that's what we talked about Tuesday.
It's frustrating, right?
Yeah.
And it's hard. But at the end of the day, hopefully in your heart of hearts, you're like, I'm sad to see him go. But I knew it was either going to be to the pros, but if Liberty sends Seth Curry to Duke, that's awesome. Like, congrats, Seth Curry. You know what I mean? Like,
and that's what he said.
Yeah.
And I'm only taking a piece of it.
Sure,
I'm just literally telling you how.
No, it makes their job way harder.
Yeah, not just you, but just people out there.
Yeah.
Shane,
I guess we're done.
All right, let's go.
I got some drinking to do here. If you won a championship and were invited to the White House, what would be the first question asked, and what would you like to see most inside?
I heard they have an underground pool, like in the White House.
Yeah,
like an indoor pool that I don't know if it gets used anymore, but I want to see that. It's kind of weird.
I'd like to see like the food situation
because the kitchen would be sick.
Because I've heard there's like a secret ice cream room and also like I just want to get the vibe there. I'm a food guy, so that's probably where I'm at.
I am out on Iowa going to the White House.
Yeah, it's weird.
It's bizarre.
I would be asking what was for dinner too. I think
I think I'm going food first.
Yeah, food first.
Shane, give me our last one.
Would you rather be the best at the sport no one has heard of, or the worst at the sport everyone's heard of?
Worst at the sport everyone's heard of.
Like as a professional, or just?
I'd say as a professional here.
Ooh, yeah, because if you're the worst at sport everyone's heard of, you're still making really good money.
Exactly what I was thinking.
If you're the best at something nobody's heard of, like you might be awesome, but you're not getting anything money-wise.
Yeah, just because like you're a really good skeet shooter at whatever level. Like
I'll take that league minimum paycheck in the NBA all day.
Exactly. Oh, man, this was fun. Robbie, I appreciate you, man. Today.
Absolutely.
TV will be back tomorrow. We also have live breakfast at Hail Varsity Club tomorrow, so come on down, like the price is right, and eat some good food and enjoy the live show. We'll see you then. It's Coffee and Cream here on Hail Varsity Radio.